Chapter 1547. Yi Fei did not know that an alliance against him had been formed in the Martial Emperor's small world. At this moment, a Martial Emperor's silhouette walked out from the stone tablet before him. This silhouette was very powerful, and it faintly emitted an aura like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Clearly, this Martial Emperor was very powerful when he was alive. He did not rely on cultivation and external items to increase his strength. At this moment, the Martial Emperor's silhouette's cold gaze was coldly staring at Yi Fei. I am the burning blood Martial Emperor. Since you have entered my tomb, are you prepared to receive an attack from me? This time, I will use my full strength and will not show any mercy. Whether you live or die, it will all depend on your luck. After he finished speaking, a terrifying killing intent emerged from the Martial Emperor's illusory figure. This killing intent was like a stormy sea, like a violent storm. If he had not faced the Guardian Elder, who was also a Martial Emperor, and had fought a bloody battle with a shaman like Zhu Yang, he would not have been able to face this killing intent from the Martial Emperor. Yi Fei's heart might have been shaken by this killing intent. However, when he thought of his current strength, even if he could not receive an attack from the Martial Emperor, there was an 80% chance that he would be able to escape from this palace in time. Yi Fei gathered his courage and loudly said, "I am ready. Senior, please make your move. Kill." His killing intent filled the sky and caused the void to tremble. At this moment, all of the power of the Martial Emperor's silhouette gathered together and formed an enormous finger that was even more resplendent than the stars. That finger instantly shattered the void and caused the fog-formed palace to violently tremble. Facing such a terrifying attack, Yi Fei's expression did not change. He did not have the slightest trace of fear. Instead, a strange expression appeared in his eyes. He had fought with the shaman Zhu Yang before. Zhu Yang was also a Martial Emperor. He had also experienced the trial of the great shaman Shangjiao. That trial was very similar to this burning blood Martial Emperor's trial. This was also the reason why he dared to try and take a blow from a Martial Emperor. Back then, during the final test of Shangjiao, the great shaman, he also stretched out a great shaman's palm in an attempt to kill me. However, in the end, Xiao Chao discovered that it was simply a frightening paper tiger. The full-powered attack of the burning blood Martial Emperor seemed to be surging with killing intent, but similarly, Xiao Chao did not feel it this time. What kind of intense spiritual energy fluctuation is this? Yi Fei suddenly decided to take a gamble. Moreover, it was very likely that he would succeed. Thus, when faced with the all-out attack of the Martial Emperor's silhouette, Yi Fei clenched his teeth and allowed the enormous palm to land on his body without any change in expression. Boom! At this moment, Yi Fei was unprecedentedly nervous. He was even prepared to summon his undying sword soul at any moment and launch a counterattack. However, his body did not suffer any injuries. The palm of the Martial Emperor's silhouette, which seemed to be frightening, only heavily landed on his shoulder as if it was real. Young man, you are very good. Remember, the path of the martial Tao is a lonely path. The more you cannot see any hope, the more you need to be patient and persevere. You need to have the courage to fight. Remember, martial emperors are not obtained through cultivation. They are obtained through fighting over the corpses of thousands of enemies. Boom! The dense fog that filled the entire small world suddenly disappeared. Similarly, the fog palace that Yi Fei was standing in also disappeared. He raised his head and looked at the burning blood martial emperor with some astonishment. Does this mean that I have passed? You have passed. Patience and courage. These are the experiences that I have left for my descendants. They are also the key to becoming a martial emperor. Of course, as a reward for passing, I will leave behind 2 small gifts for my descendants: diligence and courage. The martial emperor's silhouette stared at Yi Fei. His cold eyes were filled with a rare hint of expectation and admiration. Following this, his silhouette disappeared together with the fog in the surroundings. The entire small world instantly became empty. Only the stone tablet did not disappear. After Yi Fei passed the trial, the stone tablet emitted a mysterious glow. Lines of strange words appeared on it and entered Yi Fei's mind. Godly bloodline armor? This is the martial art that the ancient burning blood martial emperor is most proud of. After learning this martial art, one can ignite their bloodline and form a godly bloodline armor. While the bloodline is being ignited, no one below the martial emperor realm will be able to break through the defense of the armor. My heavens, how is this a small gift? This is a godly skill that can save one's life. Yi Fei was initially a little disappointed. After experiencing such a great shock, he only received 2 small gifts. However, after realizing the value of the godly bloodline armor, he was greatly astonished. This burning blood martial monarch might seem cold and hard to get along with, but he has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent so much time to create the bloodline godly armor of the martial monarch realm for his descendants. Furthermore, the godly bloodline armor is different from other martial emperor arts. Most martial emperor arts are targeted at martial emperors. In order to fully unleash their power, one must at least reach the martial emperor realm. However, this godly bloodline armor was created by the burning blood martial emperor to encourage his descendants. Even if one is not a martial emperor, they can still fully unleash the power of the armor. Yi Fei was extremely excited. With the godly bloodline armor, even if he were to encounter a martial emperor desolate beast, he would still have a chance to survive. It was likely that the burning blood martial emperor had created this martial art so that the descendants of the Tianwu continent will be able to complete the ancient path of starry sky smoothly. Senior burning blood martial emperor, many thanks. I will definitely not learn this martial art. I will successfully complete the ancient path of starry sky with it. Yi Fei bowed deeply in the direction of the stone tablet. Then, he began to search for the second small gift that the burning blood martial emperor had mentioned. Soon, he found a casually placed crystal pagoda behind the stone tablet. Looking at the pagoda, Yi Fei was stunned. This pagoda looks very familiar. Squeak, squeak. Xiao Qiao looked at the pagoda, and her eyes suddenly lit up. If Zhu Xiaomei hadn't noticed a sudden change and rushed over from afar, Xiao Qiao would have definitely rushed out and grabbed the pagoda. The dragon turtle's eyes were wide open. Damn, isn't this the true martial sacred courtyard's Saint Pagoda? Yi Fei finally realized what was wrong. This pagoda was different from the Saint Pagoda in color. However, its appearance and spiritual energy fluctuations were exactly the same as the Saint Pagoda. Zhu Xiaomei looked at the crystal pagoda and suddenly thought of something. She looked at Yi Fei enviously and said, Yi Fei, congratulations. This is a unique treasure that only existed in ancient times, the Spirit Gathering Pagoda. As the name suggests, this pagoda can store spirit veins and be carried around. It can also form a cultivation space inside. Chapter 1548. Yi Fei looked at the crystal pagoda in pleasant surprise. One had to know that his greatest regret was that he couldn't bring the Saint Pagoda into the starry heavens. That way, he wouldn't be able to quickly gather spirit veins. He could only use the crudest and crudest method, which was to refine every spirit vein he found. That was not only a waste of time and energy. There was also the possibility of someone sneak attacking him at any time. It was very inconvenient. However, things would be different with the Saint Pagoda. He could collect spirit veins at any time and wait for an opportunity to find a safe place to slowly refine them. He wouldn't have to worry about someone suddenly snatching them away, and his cultivation would be much safer. Unfortunately, the Holy Sun Pagoda was one of the most important treasures of the true martial sacred courtyard. If he were to bring it into the starry sky ancient path and accidentally lose it or get robbed, he would become a sinner of the true martial sacred courtyard. Yi Fei had no choice but to leave the Saint Pagoda in the true martial sacred courtyard. This was one of his regrets. Now, he could finally make up for this regret. Zhu Xiaomei said enviously, Spirit Pagoda also has differences in quality. According to my Zhu clan's refining records, Spirit Pagoda has a total of 10 spirits, 100 spirits, 1,000 spirits, and 10,000 spirits. Even in ancient times, spirit pagoda was an extremely rare treasure. Normally, only powerful martial emperors or martial emperors possessed them. Only martial gods possessed them. Hearing this, Yifei was pleasantly surprised. He quickly circulated his quintessence and put away the spirit pagoda. Then he asked expectantly, "Then, Zhu Xiaomei, do you think this is the 10,000 spirits pagoda?" Zhu Xiaomei was speechless. With her knowledge, she guessed that this was the relatively rare 1,000 spirits pagoda. It was still worlds apart from the 10,000 spirits pagoda. However, before she could say this, a pleasantly surprised voice interrupted her. "What? This martial emperor's world actually has the 10,000 spirits pagoda? That's great. This young master didn't come here in vain. Shui Yun, this 10,000 spirits pagoda belongs to this young master. As for the other treasures on Yi Fei, they all belong to you. Do you agree?" Wang Chun quickly flew over from the distance and looked at Yi Fei. Without even looking at it, he directly declared his ownership of the crystal pagoda. Shui Yun was infuriated. He came from a martial emperor family and had been training in the starry sky all year round. Of course, he knew the great value of a spirit-gathering pagoda. This kind of pagoda that could collect spirit veins required very rare materials to refine. It had already been extinct since ancient times. This also led to the appearance of any spirit-gathering pagoda on the ancient starry sky road. Even if it was the lowest level 10 spirits pagoda, it was likely to trigger a bloodbath. For example, the pagoda that Yi Fei obtained was likely the highest level 10 spirits pagoda, which was more than enough to trigger a fierce battle between the starry sky sections. Although the Blade God Valley was powerful, it could not be compared to the Scorching Sun sect. Shui Yun could only suppress his anger and reluctantly said, "All right, all the treasures on Yi Fei's body belong to me. Wang Chun, Shui Yun, what about us? We can't let you take all the benefits, right?" Behind Shui Yun and Wang Chun, more than a dozen young experts flew over one after another. They were all super geniuses from other starry sky sections. Although their sects were not as powerful as the Scorching Sun sect and the Blade God Valley, they were still a very powerful force when they joined forces. Shui Yun immediately looked at Wang Chun and said, "Alliance leader, we need you to settle this matter." Wang Chun was furious, but he also knew that he had seized a valuable treasure this time. If he did not share some of the benefits, it was likely that he would arouse public anger, and it would not be beneficial for him to seize the treasure. "Everyone, don't worry. Help me take back the 10 spirits pagoda this time. Once it's done, the Scorching Sun sect will give each of you 100 billion upper spiritual stones." Wang Chun had put in a lot of money this time. The moment he saw the crystal pagoda, he treated it as his own. Although the other young experts looked greedy, they knew that their forces were not as powerful as the Scorching Sun sect. Since they could not go against the Scorching Sun sect, they might as well make friends with them. Only then did they reluctantly nod. "Wang Chun, this is what you said. 100 billion upper spiritual stones per person. The Alliance leader is generous enough." "Alliance leader, do you still need more people? I also want to join the Killing Yi Alliance." Hearing that they could get 100 billion upper spiritual stones as long as they took action, the large group of martial artists who had followed and were obviously tempted. They had originally come to watch the fun. However, after discovering that they could not obtain treasures in the small world, they wanted to get some benefits from Wang Chun. As for Yi Fei, these people had never looked at Yi Fei since they had barged in. After all, the young experts who could join the Killing Yi Alliance were all from the forces in the starry sky. They all thought that no matter how strong the martial artists of the Tianwu continent were, in their eyes, they were just a bunch of people who had no idea how strong they were. They were just country bumpkins who had seen the world. Wang Chun and Shui Yun simply ignored the fact that it was Yi Fei who had passed the test and obtained the treasure. They were so excessive that they began to discuss how to divide the treasure in front of Yi Fei. Zhu Xiaomei was so angry that her face turned red. She stealthily approached Yi Fei and asked, "Why aren't you saying anything when they're so excessive? What else can I say in the face of a group of self-righteous mad dogs? They're barking together, but I can't bark with them. Wouldn't that lower my class? I'm an elegant person. I won't lower myself to the level of a group of dying dogs. After speaking, Yi Fei didn't even care about hygiene and directly spat out a mouthful of saliva. What made him feel regretful was that this time around, there were no tens of thousands of disciples of the Sacred Academy behind him. Their wills were as strong as an impregnable fortress. Even so, when they saw Yi Fei's actions and heard Yi Fei's arrogant words, Shui Yun felt that his heart had been struck. Shui Yun also instantly felt that his reverse scale had been touched. A wave of anger instantly burned his body like a flame. Yi Fei, what are you doing? If you have the guts, spit it out again. Puff. A mouthful of saliva was immediately spat at Shui Yun. Shui Yun was so angry that his hair stood on end as if he had been electrocuted. Those young experts from the starry sky were also infuriated. Yi Fei's words just now had offended all of them. On the contrary, Wang Chun was surprisingly kind at this time. Not only did he immediately stop the furious Shui Yun, but he also stopped the others from being impulsive. It wasn't that he had a conscience, but that the crystal pagoda was still in Yi Fei's hands. Wang Chun was a little worried that if he got too close, Yi Fei would fight to the death and destroy this treasure. An expensive spirit-gathering pagoda. Wang Chun waved his hand to Yi Fei generously and said, Yi Fei, I don't want to care about the grudge between you and Shui Yun, but the grudge between you and me is not unresolvable. How about this? Give me the spirit-gathering pagoda you took from me, and we'll forget about it. What do you think? What do you think? Chapter 1549. Yi Fei, I'm sorry. I've implicated you this time. Don't worry about me later. Escape on your own. Zhu Xiaomei had a resolute look on her face as she looked at Yi Fei apologetically. She was a strong and brave girl. Although she wasn't a man, she had an iron will that many men couldn't match. Yi Fei admired this kind of willpower, which was why he had chosen to step in when Zhu Xiaomei was in danger. No, Zhu Xiaomei, you're wrong. You didn't implicate me. Go away. You have no reason to interfere in this grudge. Yi Fei suddenly used his hand to push Zhu Xiaomei into the distance. He stared coldly at Shui Yun and said, Shui Yun, this is a grudge between us. You can't possibly vent your anger on a girl, right? Shui Yun was a little surprised by Yi Fei's actions. He suppressed his anger and nodded. Yi Fei, you are indeed bold. All right, since you are about to die in my hands, I can let her off. Hold on, Shui Yun. You seem to have forgotten that I am the leader of this alliance. Yi Fei, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kneel down and hand over the soul-gathering pagoda. Or do you want to see me kill Zhu Xiaomei with your own eyes? Wang Chun threatened coldly. Wang Chun, I'll fight you to the death. Zhu Xiaomei's fiery temper naturally wouldn't make her cower. She was the kind of person who would rather die than be threatened by others. Yi Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. He knew that there was no hope of keeping Zhu Xiaomei out of this. He suddenly nodded. I can give you the soul-gathering pagoda. I'll give it to whoever answers my question first. What question? Wang Chun and Shui Yun asked impatiently. My math isn't good. Please tell me loudly. What's the number between 7 and 9? Yi Fei deliberately raised his voice. Is that even a question? Haha. Yi Fei, is there something wrong with your brain? Between 7 and 9, of course it's 8. Wang Chun answered before Shui Yun could. Shui Yun was furious, but at the same time, he was a little confused. Yi Fei could break through to the half-step emperor as a person who had been abandoned by the heavens. Of course, he couldn't be a fool. No matter how bad his arithmetic was, it was impossible for him to not know how to count, right? Wait, Dad. Shui Yun suddenly realized something. My 2 sons, why are you calling me Daddy? Yi Fei immediately replied, loudly with a serious look on his face. Hearing this, Zhu Xiaomei, who had already decided to fight to the death, couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then, the other young experts also reacted in an instant. Many of them couldn't help but laugh on the spot. Shui Yun and Wang Chun's faces instantly turned ashen and then began to distort. Yi Fei, we think that you're courting death. Shui Yun's body directly emitted a huge aura of anger. Yi Fei, you've got guts. Now, You've completely offended me and my scorching sun sect. What are you waiting for? Let's attack together. Chop him up and throw him out to feed the dogs. Wang Chun was so angry that black smoke came out of his head. The moment he realized that Yi Fei wouldn't compromise, his body had already exploded. An astonishing aura of flames burst out. Then, the roaring flame domain and the magma domain erupted from Wang Chun's body at the same time. Scorching sun divine fist, saber of heaven and earth. In an instant, an extremely strong and terrifying killing intent also erupted from Shui Yun's body. Then, this killing intent formed a heavenly saber that shook the void. The surging saber Qi caused the martial emperor's small world to shake violently. Attack together and kill him. He's at death's door, and he still dares to tease us. This guy is simply courting death. Seeing that Shui Yun and Wang Chun had made their move to kill Yi Fei, the other young experts of the Yi Alliance revealed cold killing intent after laughing. They rushed up at the same time and rushed towards Yi Fei from all directions. Seeing this, Zhu Xiaomei's eyes turned cold. She held the golden battle halberd tightly, and a continuous dragon roar suddenly erupted. Then, the golden battle halberd in her hand turned into a golden dragon. It also carried a blazing aura of a domain as it charged towards the geniuses. There's actually a king realm. It seems that Zhu Xiaomei's side will be able to hold on for a while, even if they're surrounded. During this time, as long as I kill Shui Yun and Wang Chun, this so-called Kill Yi Alliance will naturally collapse. Yi Fei's expression was cold. His mind was spinning rapidly, and he had already analyzed the situation that he was facing. Without any hesitation, the heavy black sword in Yi Fei's hand was already carrying a terrifying force as it smashed forward. The void shook violently and showed signs of collapsing. Shui Yun's heavenly saber was completely smashed by the black sword and turned into a streak of light. Flowing light, Shui Yun's face turned pale in an instant. He couldn't believe that Yi Fei's black sword had such a terrifying force that it could directly shatter his heavenly saber. Shui Yun, be careful. That brat's black sword is terrifyingly heavy. It can even shatter our King Realm domain. Wang Chun had suffered at the hands of the black sword before. When he saw Yi Fei take out the black sword, he slyly dodged to the side. When Yi Fei's black sword smashed out, Wang Chun immediately seized the opportunity and launched a sudden attack. The fiercest counterattack. His scorching sun divine fist carried an unparalleled blazing light. At this moment, it was like the sun illuminating the entire pocket dimension. Then, he ruthlessly blasted towards Yi Fei. If this punch landed, he was confident that he could directly melt Yi Fei's body into charcoal. 8 heavenly dragons. Yi Fei's entire body emitted a golden light. He was like a golden demon god. 8 terrifying dragon roars could be heard from his body. The 8 heavenly dragons were already roaring as they rushed out from his body. Then, the 8 heavenly dragons opened their mouths at the same time. 5 of them spat out golden dragon breaths. They were like 5 golden waterfalls that poured down from the sky. The other blood dragon, ice dragon, and azure dragon opened their mouths at the same time and spat out 3 king realm domains that were shining brightly. They collided with Wang Chun's scorching sun divine fist. Together, Wang Chun's scorching sun divine fist was instantly shattered. Even he was forced to retreat continuously by the might of the 8 heavenly dragons. How is this possible? Isn't the person who has been abandoned by the heavens a piece of trash on the martial path? How can he have 3 king realm domains? Shui Yun was extremely shocked. One had to know that as the top genius of the Blade God Valley, he had only managed to barely have 2 king realm domains after cultivating for more than 20 years. However, Yi Fei did not even blink as he released 3 king realm domains in one breath. Suddenly, a strong sense of jealousy and anger flashed across Shui Yun's heart. I will not allow myself to be surpassed by a piece of trash on the martial path. Yi Fei, I will take your life. Sword of Truth. Boom. Chapter 1550. Yi Fei, do you think that I, Shui Yun, will fall for the same trick twice? As the top genius of the Blade God Valley, although Shui Yun wasn't as good as Shui Yu, he had rich combat experience. The moment he realized that he couldn't defeat the Sword of Truth, his mind power as a top genius suddenly exploded. It formed a special mental armor that protected his soul. Such a method also exceeded Yi Fei's expectations. He was surprised to discover that although ordinary cultivators were unable to cultivate sorcery, the Saber God Valley had used some unknown method to master a very mysterious spirit martial technique. This martial technique allowed them to condense their spirit energy and use it. They could attack and defend. It's a pity that your opponent is me. You are still far from being able to compete with me in terms of mind power. Yi Fei shook his head coldly. Although he also didn't know sorcery, his powerful mental nebula had already given him a terrifying mind power that was comparable to a sorcerer's. At this moment, Yi Fei was mobilizing all of his mind power. With a loud boom, the golden mental nebula in his mind suddenly formed a terrifying mental whirlpool. In the whirlpool, streaks of Sword of Truth turned into golden divine light and continuously slashed at Shui Yun. 1 streak, 2 streaks, 5 streaks, 10 streaks. No, that's definitely impossible. When he saw that Yi Fei was able to release 10 streaks of mind power in one breath, Shui Yun's proud eyes couldn't help but reveal a deep sense of fear. Even the strongest genius of the Blade God Valley, Shui Yu, could release 5 streaks of mind power at most once. However, Yi Fei could release 10 streaks of mind power in a row. Didn't this mean that Yi Fei's mind power was twice as strong as that of an exceptional genius like Shui Yu? Boom, boom, boom. The Sword of Truth continued to stab at Shui Yun, clashing with Shui Yun's spiritual armor. Every time their spiritual energies clashed, it was like 2 war drums were rumbling, shaking the heavens and earth and shaking people's hearts. Ah, the fury of the Saber God. Yi Fei, I'll fight you to the death. Shui Yun spat out blood crazily. Every time their minds clashed, it was a serious blow to him. In fact, Yi Fei's second Sword of Truth had already slashed over. At that time, Shui Yun's spiritual armor had already been shattered. Fei's mind swords continuously pierced into the depths of Shui Yun's soul in an attempt to shatter it. However, Shui Yun was a top genius after all. Not only was he powerful, but his soul was also extraordinarily powerful. Just as Yi Fei's spiritual sword was about to shatter his soul, Shui Yun suddenly descended into complete madness. A layer of flames that emitted a terrifying saber intent began to burn on his body. This is the Saber God bloodline unique to the Saber God Valley. It is said that the ancestor of the Saber God Valley was once the illegitimate son of a martial god. Therefore, many of the direct descendants of the Saber God Valley possess a certain degree of martial god's bloodline. Some of the spectators could not help but exclaim. Originally, many people had thought that this would be a one-sided battle. Anyone who faced 2 top geniuses and a dozen super geniuses would only end up in a miserable defeat. However, not only had Yi Fei smashed Wang Qin back with a sword, but he had also used a strange spiritual attack to force Shui Yun to ignite his bloodline in order to block Yi Fei's attack. How is this possible? Kill. Fury of the Saber God. Shui Yun descended into madness. Clearly, he was still unable to fully control the power of the bloodline in his body. After all, this was the bloodline of a martial god. Even if the bloodline in Shui Yun's body was very thin, the power that it could unleash was extremely shocking. At this moment, the entire world was filled with boundless saber intent. It tore through the void and shattered the stars. Finally, Shui Yun's entire body turned into an extremely sharp and terrifying saber that was burning with bloody flames. He viciously and mercilessly slashed at Yi Fei's body. Die. Scorching sun, burning mountain. Seeing that Shui Yun had started to fight for his life, Wang Chun roared and also ignited his own ardent sun bloodline. His body seemed to have turned into a human-shaped furnace. He raised his palm high, and the roaring flames on his palm turned into a scorching sun. The scorching sun was like a godly flame descending upon the earth. It set the mountain range on fire, resulting in a soaring blaze. Let's go too. The rest of the members of the Kill Yi Fei Alliance furiously attacked too. 100 billion spiritual stones were extremely tempting. In order to obtain these spiritual stones, they had no choice but to go all out. Instantly, various martial arts glows were fired at Yi Fei from all directions. It was Yi Fei's first time wearing a stern expression. Even though he was strong, he still felt a great pressure and anger when facing so many geniuses at the same time. We have no grudge against each other, yet you're trying to kill me just because of some spiritual stones. Very well, since you are so heartless, don't blame me for being ruthless. Godly bloodline armor. Boom! Yi Fei no longer held back. He immediately executed the godly bloodline armor that he had just learned. This martial art was a life-saving technique that the ancient martial emperor, Burning Blood, had specially created for the younger generation. The rarest thing about it was that it did not need to be cultivated. As long as one possessed a special bloodline, they could execute it. Coincidentally, Yi Fei possessed the purest demon god bloodline in his body. When his bloodline started to ignite, a layer of strange armor that was burning with raging flames covered Yi Fei's entire body. Then Yi Fei saw a terrifying heavenly saber and a terrifying scorching sunday. At the same time, they smashed into his body. At this moment, a shocking explosion occurred in this martial emperor's small world. In the end, it was filled with whistling saber chi and blazing flames. Then, there was the martial light of more than 10 super geniuses. This caused the space where Yi Fei was to tremble violently. The space collapsed like snowflakes. Many cultivators gasped when they saw this. If this was not the martial emperor's small world, the combined attacks of so many geniuses could have caused this small world to collapse on the spot. As expected of the top geniuses. Although Yi Fei is very strong, he still could not withstand the combined attacks of 2 top geniuses. I wonder if he is dead? Is there even a need to ask? With so many geniuses working together, even a quasi-emperor would be killed. That Yi Fei is definitely dead. How is that possible? At this time, the martial light that filled the sky gradually dissipated. And in that collapsed world, there was a youth wearing blood-flame divine armor. He coldly held a black sword as he walked out step by step from the collapsed space. Chapter 1551. Boom! The heavy black sword caused the void to tremble violently. The super genius was smashed into a bloody mist, and his bones were completely shattered in an instant. No! Blood and flesh splattered all over the faces of the super geniuses. One of the super geniuses screamed in horror and wanted to retreat. However, before he could do so, a heavy sword ray suddenly smashed toward his head. With a loud bang, his head exploded into a bloody mist. Kill! There were also super geniuses who wanted to retaliate. There were 3 young experts who took the opportunity to circle behind Yi Fei and attack him. 3 emperor weapons of different colors stabbed toward Yi Fei's vitals at almost the same time. However, just as their emperor weapon stabbed into Yi Fei's body, the bloodline godly armor suddenly released a strong resistance. The resistance made them feel as if they were eggs hitting a rock. Bang! One of the super geniuses had used too much force with his quasi-emperor weapon. The moment it hit the bloodline godly armor, it suddenly broke. He was stunned for a moment before an intense pain came from his neck. The last thing he saw was Yi Fei turning around. The black sword whistled through the air, bringing with it a sharp black light. Just a single slash, and the heads of all 3 of them had been chopped off. Boom! Yi Fei's bloodline godly armor was so terrifying that the remaining super geniuses were scared out of their wits. No one dared to attack anymore, and they all retreated frantically with fear. Didn't you want to kill me? Why are you running away now? Yi Fei roared coldly. He was completely enraged. After slaying the 3 geniuses who had ambushed him with the black sword in his hand, Yi Fei instantly charged towards the 4th person. I beg you, please don't kill me. I know I was wrong. Yi Fei answered him with a cold sword ray. Yi Fei, You're in big trouble now. Do you know who we are? Do you know how strong our Starry Sky sect is? Puff. With another sword strike, Yi Fei mercilessly cut off the man's head in front of everyone. Then, he coldly said to the man's corpse, "Your Starry Sky is strong, but that doesn't give you a reason to bully others. If you want to kill me, then you should be prepared to be killed by me." Kill. Yi Fei discovered another genius who was trying to escape. He showed no mercy as he dashed forward and grabbed the man's hair, beheading him with a single slash. "Since you've chosen to join the Killing Yi Alliance and become my enemy, you should be prepared to die." Rumble. The heavy black sword was like a bolt of black lightning in Yi Fei's hand. It was also like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Wherever his figure passed, pillars of blood would soar into the sky, dyeing the sky red. Bloody heads would roll in all directions. The warriors who were watching the battle were scared out of their wits. At first, they thought that Yi Fei was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. However, at this moment, they were terrified to discover that Yi Fei was a terrifying demon god. The most terrifying thing was the burning bloodline armor on Yi Fei's body. It was simply an invincible defense. No martial technique could break through this terrifying armor on Yi Fei's body. On the other hand, Yi Fei relied on the terrifying defense of the armor to ignore all the attacks from these super geniuses. Wherever he appeared, the super geniuses would be beheaded and blood would flow like a river. This process seemed very long and cruel. But in fact, in just a dozen breaths of time, the 17 super geniuses of the Starry Sky Alliance had all died under Yi Fei's black sword. Their heads rolled to the ground, and the smell of blood made many of the spectating warriors tremble in fear, their legs trembling. Wang Chun and Shui Yun were completely scared out of their wits. They did not dare to stay. Wang Chun roared angrily and suddenly took out a raging flame elixir and swallowed it. His body suddenly emitted intense flames as he rushed out of the entrance of the pocket dimension. Yi Fei, wait for the endless pursuit of the Scorching Sun sect. The Blade God Valley will never let you off. You will die at the hands of little blade gods sooner or later. Shui Yun's reaction was also very fast. He took advantage of the time when Yi Fei was killing the others to turn and run. In order to run faster, Shui Yun burned his bloodline again. This allowed his speed to be faster than Wang Chen's, and he rushed out of the pocket dimension first. Oh my god, Wang Chun and Shui Yun actually escaped. What kind of bullsh asterisk T top geniuses are they? They're actually like this. The martial world always worshipped the strong. Yi Fei's absolute massacre and the heads on the ground proved his strength. At this moment, no one dared to underestimate Yi Fei anymore. The surrounding martialists hurriedly opened up a path. At the same time, they looked strangely at Yi Fei. They really wanted to see if Yi Fei would still have the guts to chase after Wang Chun and Shui Yun, the two top geniuses, after killing these super geniuses. At this moment, Zhu Xiaomei had also recovered from her shock. She simply could not connect the current Yi Fei with the Yi Fei she had seen in the merchant city. After all, although Yi Fei had been very strong, he had only been slightly stronger than the top geniuses of their quasi-emperor families. However, after more than a year, Yi Fei's current cultivation base had actually allowed him to defeat the top geniuses of the quasi-emperor families and the Starry Sky sects. There was even a moment when Zhu Xiaomei thought that Yi Fei was an exceptional genius. However, even if Yi Fei was an exceptional genius, he was still a human. Behind Shui Yun was the entire Blade God Valley. Behind Wang Chun was the super sect that controlled the bottom path of the ancient Starry Sky path. Zhu Xiaomei did not want Yi Fei to impulsively put himself in danger. She immediately rushed forward and pulled Yi Fei back. Yi Fei, you can't kill them anymore. The entire bottom path of the ancient Starry Sky path has already been controlled by the Scorching Sun sect. Wang Chun has escaped, so he will definitely inform the experts of the Scorching Sun sect to kill you. If they want to kill me, they will have to have the ability to do so. My principle is that I won't attack unless I am attacked. If they attack me, they will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Wang Chun and Shui Yun have repeatedly provoked me, and even formed this bullshit killing you alliance to kill me. I don't care who is behind them. Today I will kill them. A cold glint flashed across Yifei's eyes. He did not immediately give chase, as he needed time to clean up the battlefield and collect the space belts of those super geniuses. After doing all this, he immediately raised his black sword and gave chase without hesitation. Kill! Even though they were tens of thousands of meters away, Wang Chun and Shui Yun could still sense the rapidly approaching demonic figure behind them. Shui Yun was so frightened that his face turned pale instantly. Chapter 1552. That's right, we must seek revenge and escape back to Blazing Sun City. We'll ask the heavenly quasi-emperors to take Yi Fei's life. After the initial fear, Shui Yun immediately came to his senses. No matter how strong Yi Fei was, he was only one person. They were on the ancient star path, and any accidents could happen. The spirit-gathering pagoda on Yi Fei was undoubtedly the source of trouble. Furthermore, Yi Fei had completely offended Wang Chun. Shui Yun immediately suggested to Wang Chun, "Wang Chun, we can't keep running. You'd better pass on the news of Yi Fei obtaining the spirit-gathering pagoda to the 3 heavenly quasi-emperors now." I don't need you to teach me what to do. Useless trash. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been chased so pathetically by Yi Fei. Wang Chun was furious. He had formed an alliance with Shui Yun because he wanted to use Shui Yun's strength to deal with Yi Fei. Who knew that Shui Yun was so useless that he was no match for Yi Fei? Not only was he defeated by Yi Fei in front of everyone, but he was also forced to flee pathetically. Even if he informed the heavenly quasi-emperors of the Blazing Sun sect to kill Yi Fei, the humiliation this time would not be erased. Wang Chun naturally hated Shui Yun at this time. He did not hold back and scolded Shui Yun. This also made Shui Yun's face turn pale, but before he could refute, there was a loud boom. Yi Fei had already charged out of the sea of rocks with his black sword. His divine consciousness had also completely locked onto the 2 of them in an instant. Wang Chun, Shui Yun, didn't want to kill me? What's the difference between you and stray dogs now? His voice was like rolling thunder, shaking the surrounding starry sky. He was deliberately angering the 2 of them, hoping that they would have some backbone and turn back to fight. Hearing this voice, Wang Chun and Shui Yun's faces turned even uglier than pig liver. Their faces were filled with shame, anger, humiliation, fear, and other complex emotions. Wang Chun suddenly sneered and said disdainfully, "You're dreaming if you want to provoke us. When the elders of the Scorching Sun sect arrive, I'll make Yi Fei kneel in front of me." Shui Yun also nodded angrily. That's right. We are all peak geniuses. Our future is destined to be 100 times, 1,000 times more glorious than a cripple like him. So what if we suffer some verbal humiliation now? When we become martial monarchs, quasi-emperors, others will only look up to us. Huang, who will remember today's humiliation? Ha ha ha. Shui Yun, you're right. But unfortunately, you're wrong about one thing. The glory of the future belongs to me, not you. In the eyes of our starry sky sects, the martial artists of the martial heaven continent are all lowly commoners. You're just cattle and sheep that will slaughter once we're fat. Now, Ben, young master orders you, lowly commoner, to use your life to buy more time for me. Shui Yun sensed that Yi Fei was chasing after them at an increasing speed. If the 3 of them continued the chase, they would be caught by Yi Fei. A vicious glint immediately flashed in Wang Chun's eyes. While Shui Yun was completely defenseless, Wang Chun sent a palm strike at him. Instantly, a terrifying scorching sun palm struck Shui Yun's body in the starry sky. As a peak genius of the Saber God Valley, Shui Yun's reaction was not slow. A terrifying saber light instantly erupted from his body. That saber light was like a shooting star in the night sky. It tore through the darkness and flickered with a terrifying martial light. Unfortunately, Wang Chun was already prepared. Wang Chun's palm strike was not meant to kill Shui Yun. Instead, he used all his strength to send Shui Yun, who was running alongside him, flying in the direction of Yi Fei. The entire starry sky was filled with Shui Yun's furious roar. However, he was still unable to defend against Wang Qin's sudden attack. There was a loud explosion. Shui Yun's body had already been sent flying by Wang Qin's scorching Sun Divine Palm. The distance between Shui Yun and Yi Fei was also constantly shrinking. The intense fear and anger caused Shui Yun to immediately curse furiously. Wang Qin, you will die a horrible death. Oomph. Even if you are from a martial emperor clan, you are just a lowly person who escaped from the Tianwu continent. It is your honor to use your lowly life to block this disaster for this young master. Yi Fei, just you wait. When this young master escapes back to Blazing Sun City, it will be the time of your death. Blood flowed from the corner of Wang Qin's mouth. Clearly, he had paid a certain price in order to push Shui Yun back as much as possible. However, all of this was worth it. At the same time, a scorching flame pill appeared in his hand. He swallowed it to increase his fleeing speed. The falling out between the two of them was completely out of Yi Fei's expectations. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he understood Wang Qin's shameless goal. However, the journey from the starry sky to Blazing Sun City was still very long. He decisively gave up on chasing after Wang Qin and charged at the heavily injured Shui Yun with his fastest speed. Shui Yun's face instantly turned pale. He used his last bit of hope and shouted, Yi Fei, spare me. I am willing to resolve the grudge between us. Resolve the grudge? If it wasn't me chasing after you, but you chasing after me, would you have spared me and resolved the grudge between us? Yi Fei coldly charged over. Shui Yun's face turned even paler. Shortly after, his eyes turned incomparably crazy. He roared at Yi Fei, since I'm going to die, then let me die gloriously. Use your strongest attack to kill me. As you wish. Boom! Yi Fei put away the black sword and suddenly took out the devouring spirit sword. Instantly, sword chi soared from his body, forming a whistling sword river that shook the starry sky and shattered the world. Kill! At this moment, Shui Yun also recovered the fighting spirit and heroic spirit of a martial artist. In this instant, his blood was completely ignited. His entire person was like a human-shaped torch that shone with boundless light. Then, within this torch, a heavenly blade suddenly appeared. It furiously slashed the heavens and the earth. The blade light was boundless. It completely suppressed Yi Fei's sword light. Yi Fei's expression immediately turned serious. He understood that this blade light was Shui Yun's final glory. He suddenly roared, and 4 complete domains rushed out of his body. Azure Dragon Domain, Blood Demon Domain, Ice Domain, Tai Chi Domain. Boom! Boom! The moment the 4 king domains appeared, the starry sky trembled violently. Amidst the raging primordial essence, Yi Fei slashed out the Tai Chi dual swords and also activated the 8-level heavenly dragons. These 2 heavenly venerate level primordial heavenly techniques merged perfectly at this moment, forming an even more powerful ray of light. The terrifying martial light fiercely shattered the divine blade light in front of it. Then, with a sword, it pierced Shui Yun's throat. Shui Yun, rest in peace. Yi Fei withdrew his blood-dripping sword. Chapter 1553. Even though Yi Fei had rejected his request, when Shui Yun heard Yi Fei's resolute words before he left, for some reason, 2 lines of transparent tears suddenly rolled down from the corners of his eyes before he died. His former ally had betrayed him, and his former enemy was willing to become enemies with all the sects of the bottom path for a random reason. This was truly a bitter irony. With this pain, Shui Yun's body suddenly dissipated under the sword chi that erupted from his body. His spatial belt was reduced to dust. This scene deeply shocked the other cultivators in the starry sky. Like Wang Qin, they had come from the starry sky. From a young age, they had long since considered themselves the masters of the starry sky. They had forgotten just how powerful the martial heaven continent had once been. They had forgotten just how powerful this ancient path had been. Who had created it? Many of them had looked down on the martial heaven continent from the bottom of their hearts. But at this moment, their hearts were filled with complicated emotions. Yifei had killed Shui Yun with a single blow. However, this devil-like youth hadn't chosen to stop. He had clearly known just how terrifying Wang Qin's background was, but he had still chased after him, drawing his sword and drawing blood. Are the martial heaven continent's cultivators all this crazy? No, they're all weak. But there are always a few among them that are as dazzling as the stars. For example, the white-robed war god Di Fan, the devil sun Fu Renjie, the small knife god Shui Yu, and now Yifei. If they hadn't counted, they wouldn't have known. But when they counted carefully, the martial artists in the starry sky jumped in fright. Only now did they realize that the martial heaven continent had already given birth to so many peerless geniuses. Such a grand scene was impossible to appear in the starry sky. Perhaps the great era that grandfather spoke of is really coming. Zhu Xiaomei was incomparably excited. She clenched her golden halberd tightly, resembling a fearless female general. Wherever Yifei went, she wanted to follow him there. The other starry sky martial artists were also excited. After all, the starry sky was still peaceful. They had not seen a scene like this for a long time, where they killed people with swords and chased the enemy for thousands of miles. At this time, the blood of martial artists began to boil. I wonder if Yifei will be able to kill Wang Qin before he escapes back to Blazing Sun City. I think it'll be very difficult. Wang Qin is also a peak genius, and he's also the son of an elder of the Blazing Sun sect. He must have many life-saving treasures on him. Many cultivators shook their heads. Although they approved of Yifei, they didn't think that Yifei would have the strength to chase after Wang Qin after killing Shui Yun. However, they still subconsciously followed as quickly as possible. No one wanted to miss out on this battle between peak geniuses. Yifei's despicable. He wouldn't allow such a person. Given this person's despicable character, if I can't kill him now, even if Wang Qin can't take revenge on me, he'll definitely take revenge on the people around me. This is what a despicable person like Wang Qin is best at. As for despicable people, it's either you don't provoke them, or you kill them once and for all. Yifei's eyes flashed with a cold light. Even if Wang Qin had escaped from Xiao Chao's detection range by relying on Shui Yun to buy time, the beastmark space, Xiao Chao, and Wang Qin's spiritual qi were still within Xiao Chao's detection range. The distance between them was 500 miles. If they were on land, Yifei would be able to catch up in a few breaths. However, he couldn't do so in the starry sky. This place was filled with the power of the stars, which would greatly hinder Yifei's movement speed. If they were in the starry sky, the distance between them would be 500 miles. Even a quasi-emperor would feel despair. Yifei didn't despair. Ordinary methods can't catch up to Wang Qin, but I still have special methods. At most, I'll personally go to the Merchant Union to apologize. I must master the Great Void technique. Boom! A void aura suddenly appeared on Yifei's body. He began to chase after Wang Qin while rapidly practicing the Great Void technique. This was definitely an incomparably crazy scene. No one would have thought that Yifei would actually practice martial arts while chasing after the enemy. This demon-like youth, what was there that he didn't dare to do? Not to mention the many starry sky martial artists behind him. Even Wang Qin, who had secretly received the news, was a little confused. Now you're practicing martial arts. Do you think you can catch up to me like this? A lowly commoner will always be a lowly commoner. You don't have any knowledge at all. This is the starry sky. Do you think it's still the same country bumpkin Tianwu continent? Wang Qin kept sneering. However, we found out that Yifei was actually distracted by his martial arts while chasing after him. Wang Qin finally stopped swallowing elixirs to escape. After all, although the blazing flame elixir could temporarily increase his strength, it also came with a certain price. This kind of elixir was extremely rare. The price would be his lifespan. Swallowing the fierce flame pill would consume a certain amount of his life force. Unless he was in a life and death situation, even the elders of the Scorching Sun sect would not dare to use it casually. Wang Qin, who cherished his life, would not dare to use it casually. Therefore, after Shui Yun's death, the chase in the starry sky quickly evolved into an inexplicable situation. Although Yi Fei had not given up on chasing after Wang Chun, most of his attention was obviously focused on practicing martial arts. Although Wang Chun had been running for his life, he was obviously not as nervous and afraid as he was at the beginning. Sometimes, he even deliberately slowed down to lure Yi Fei to the vicinity of Scorching Sun City. This would be more advantageous for the elders of the Scorching Sun sect to kill Yi Fei. Many martial artists saw through Wang Chun's intentions and were puzzled. Could it be that Yi Fei is only pretending to chase after Wang Chun? Is he secretly afraid of the Scorching Sun sect? That's possible. After all, the Scorching Sun sect is a powerful sect that controls the entire lower path of the starry sky. Even if Yi Fei is an exceptional genius, he can't afford to offend them. Some martial artists sighed softly. Can't afford to offend them? Ever since I met Yi Fei, I have never seen anyone that Yi Fei does not dare to offend. In the past, he was restrained by the real Martial Sacred Academy, so he could still behave himself. Now that he has been expelled from the real Martial Sacred Academy, it could be said that he has no restraints. Who can restrain this demon King Yi on the ancient path of the starry sky? Zhu Xiaomei was secretly amused by the discussions of these martial artists in the starry sky. Others might not have noticed, but Zhu Xiaomei was keenly aware that Yi Fei's aura became more and more elegant as he cultivated. It felt as if Yi Fei was no longer walking in the starry sky, but had completely integrated into it. In the starry sky. Finally, after more than 10 days of this tepid chase, Yi Fei's figure suddenly disappeared from the starry sky. He had completely integrated into the void and was running rapidly in the void. 5 miles, 25 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles. Yi Fei's speed became faster and faster. Soon, the surrounding martial artists had lost track of Yi Fei's aura. A few hundred miles away, Wang Chun, who had been mocking Yi Fei for being a fool, suddenly sensed an extremely terrifying aura coming from the void at lightning speed. Suddenly, a lightning bolt shot towards him. Chapter 1554. Wang Chun's face was filled with fear when he saw Yi Fei charging towards him with a sudden increase in speed. At this moment, he immediately unleashed his strongest bloodline aura. While he was burning his bloodline, Wang Chun did not care if he would embarrass himself. He immediately took out a strange mirror and shouted into it. He shouted. This mirror was a unique voice transmission mirror in the starry sky. Although Yi Fei did not know what a voice transmission mirror was, he had used a witchcraft mirror before and naturally understood why Wang Chun had taken out this mirror. Yi Fei's body was filled with boundless killing intent. In an instant, his 8 primordial spirits and spiritual power erupted at the same time. The Shan clan's Great Void technique was very magical. To use this martial art, one not only needed the power of one's primordial spirit, but also spiritual power. The stronger the combination of the two, the faster the Great Void technique would be. The faster the speed. And Yi Fei happened to be at the peak of his realm in terms of vital essence and spiritual power. Even many martial emperors and quasi-emperors could surpass Yi Fei in terms of vital essence. But Yi Fei was absolutely invincible in terms of spiritual power. At this time, Yi Fei's Great Void technique unleashed a terrifying effect. It allowed his speed to break through the limit of 200 miles per second and reach a terrifying distance of 300 miles per second. In an instant, he appeared in front of Wang Chun. Go to hell, Yi Fei roared. At this moment, he thought of the evil that Wang Chun had done to Zhu Xiaomei. He also thought of Wang Chun's despicable betrayal of Shui Yun. Instantly, a terrifying killing intent appeared on his body. The Star Sword embryo carried a terrifying power that could shatter the void and smash towards Wang Chun's head. But at that moment, Wang Chun also let out a furious roar. His eyes were red, and at that moment, he ignited his own bloodline without caring about the price. The fire domain and the lava domain were ignited at the same time. With Wang Chun as the center, a terrifying ring of flames erupted. That ring of flames swept out. The blazing aura of the nebula burned the black sword in Yi Fei's hand until it emitted layers of strange smoke, as if it was about to melt. You want to compete in domains with me? Yi Fei realized that the black sword was unable to break through the ring of flames. Without hesitation, he activated the 8 extreme heavenly dragons. Furious dragon roars came from within his body. Following that, 8 mighty and majestic heavenly dragons appeared in different postures. Suddenly, with Yi Fei at the center, 8 strange doors appeared. At this moment, the world seemed to have stopped moving. Only the roar of the heavenly dragon and the heavy black sword could be heard as it smashed towards the ring of flames. The rumbling and trembling caused Wang Chun to roar in anger. He knew that this was his last chance to survive. He roared and directly exploded with the final glory that only a top genius could have. His bloodline and domain were all ignited in an instant, forming the most terrifying ring of flames. It was like a sea of fire that burned the starry sky and blocked Yi Fei's advance. Behind Yi Fei, the 8 heavenly dragons roared loudly. They opened their mouths, and 5 heavenly dragons spat out rays of light. They were like golden suns that pierced through the void. The Azure Dragon, Blood Dragon, and Ice Dragon turned into domains. They were like 3 shining stars that collided with Wang Chen's domain. Terrifying cracks appeared in the starry sky the moment the 2 domains collided. Yi Fei's 3 domains exploded. Clearly, Wang Chen's strength was stronger than Shui Yun's. He had used all his strength to successfully block Yi Fei's 8 extreme heavenly dragons. However, Yi Fei was not discouraged. When the 3 domains were destroyed, a 4th domain immediately appeared on his body. It was the Tai Chi domain. The black sword in his hand quickly turned into the devouring spirit sword. Accompanied by dazzling sword light, it was like a raging dragon that slashed out from Yi Fei's hand. In the sky, a gigantic Tai Chi sword diagram suddenly appeared. It suppressed the starry sky and ruthlessly crashed towards Wang Chun. "If you kill me, you won't live either." Wang Chun roared furiously. However, his face was filled with fear and despair. He had never dreamed that after using all his strength to destroy Yi Fei's 3 domains, a 4th domain would appear on Yi Fei's body. No wonder that lowly Shui Yin died so quickly. He's just a lowly commoner. How can he have 4 domains like a peerless genius? I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Yi Fei, I beg you, let me go. Faced with the fear of death, Wang Chun broke down completely. He realized that he could not resist. He immediately knelt in the starry sky and burst into tears. Let you go? Have you ever let Sister Zhu go? Have you ever let Shui Yin go? Have you ever let me go? Yi Fei showed no mercy. The devouring spirit sword was boiling with murderous intent. He wanted to kill Wang Chun on the spot. Stop. If you dare to hurt Wang Chun, you will become an enemy of the Scorching Sun sect and the entire starry sky. At this moment, 3 flame-like figures suddenly appeared in the distance. They were still tens of thousands of meters away, but the power they exuded caused the starry sky to tremble slightly. Ripples. At the same time, 3 powerful powers unique to the Heaven Boundary Emperors pressed down on Yi Fei's body. It was as if he was carrying 3 giant mountains on his back. Yi Fei felt a chill in his heart. He gritted his teeth and said, "Scorching Sun sect, Heaven Boundary Emperors. That's right, it's us." The 3 Heaven Boundary Emperors were all dressed in bright red robes. Their bodies exuded boundless fiery light like 3 dazzling torches that lit up the starry sky. When they saw that Wang Chun was not only covered in blood, but was also kneeling in the starry sky in fear, one of the elders was instantly enraged. "Wang Chun, what are you doing? As a genius of the starry sky sect, why are you kneeling in front of a lowly commoner?" Wang Chen's face flushed red with anger. When the 3 elders were not here, he was scared to death of Yi Fei. Now that the 3 elders were here, Wang Chun flew into a rage. He pointed at Yi Fei's nose and roared, "Yi Fei, you're finished, you lowly bastard. Commoner, lowly sky martial continent. What are you waiting for? Kneel down and slap yourself until I'm satisfied." Wang Chun, is this the attitude you use to beg for mercy? Yi Fei did not care about the three elders of the Scorching Sun sect. He only looked at Wang Chun coldly, as if he was looking at a dead man. Wang Chun was very unhappy with Yi Fei's gaze. Wang Chun understood that before three heavenly quasi-emperors, even if Yi Fei had 10 times the courage, he would not dare to make a move on him. So, he pointed at his own neck and said, "Yi Fei, aren't you very courageous? Didn't you look down on this young master? Now, this old man is standing before you. If you have the guts, then come and kill me. If you do, you'll be a complete trash." Puff. Chapter 1555. They had all heard that a cultivator from the Tianwu continent was courting death, daring to cause trouble at the bottom of the starry sky controlled by the Scorching Sun sect. Hence, they had specially come to watch the show. Who would have thought that instead of watching the show, they would see an incomparably shocking scene? The peak genius of the Scorching Sun sect, Wang Chun, who had harmed countless women in Scorching Sun City, was actually forced to flee miserably by a nameless junior. In the end, in order to survive, Wang Chun did not hesitate to kneel and beg for mercy. Of course, the most shocking thing was that Yi Fei had disregarded the heaven-rank quasi-emperors and killed Wang Chun with one sword strike. This caused many of the cultivators who had rushed over to pale in fright. Zhu Xiaomei's heart trembled violently. Although she already knew that Yi Fei would not let Wang Chun off, she had never imagined that Yi Fei would dare to kill Wang Chun in front of the heaven-rank quasi-emperors. This is simply slapping the heaven-rank quasi-emperors in the face. It's not just a slap in the face. This person from the Tianwu continent is simply not putting the Scorching Sun sect in his eyes. That brat. Why didn't he run after causing such a huge disaster? How could he run? That's a heaven-rank quasi-emperor, without a doubt. In this era where martial emperors did not appear, heaven-rank quasi-emperors were the peak and most terrifying existences, be it on land or in the starry sky. However, at this moment, Yi Fei actually dared to kill Wang Chun in front of the three quasi-emperors. This not only caused the surrounding cultivators to pale in fright, but it also caused the three quasi-emperors to jump in fright. They could not believe that this was real until they saw Wang Chun's bloody head. It was only when it rolled to their feet that they suddenly realized something. Wang Chun is actually dead. Furthermore, he killed him in front of us. Vile being, where did you get the guts to do this? Do you know the consequences of doing this? Boom, boom, boom. The three heaven-grade quasi-emperors simultaneously erupted with terrifying rage. As this rage spread out, all the cultivators within 50 kilometers of them found it difficult to breathe. They felt like someone was grabbing them by the neck. Yi Fei's body emitted a dazzling golden light. Like a golden demon god, he stood proudly in the starry sky. He pointed at Wang Chun's corpse and said loudly, "This Wang Chun defiled a woman and betrayed his allies. He has committed all kinds of evil. Since the Scorching Sun sect did not discipline him properly and allowed him to roam freely in the starry sky. Since he has done evil on the ancient path, he should be prepared to be killed." Yi Fei's words resonated with many people. The three heaven-stage quasi-emperors were well aware of what kind of person Wang Chun was. However, since Wang Chun was a top genius and his father was an elder, they usually turned a blind eye to him. After all, the women that Wang Chun had harmed were all from the Tianwu continent. In the eyes of these high and mighty elders, anyone who came from the Tianwu continent was a lowly commoner. They looked down on them from the bottom of their hearts and did not welcome them to the ancient path of the starry sky. Since that was the case, what did it matter if Wang Chun killed a few lowly commoner women? It was fine as long as everyone knew about it. However, Yi Fei had actually said it in front of everyone and even killed Wang Chun in front of them. This was a ruthless slap to the Scorching Sun sect's face. This was a slap to the face of the three heaven-grade quasi-emperors. The three of them exchanged glances with one another. The white-haired old man on the left took a step forward furiously and threw a terrifying fiery palm at Yifei. He yelled, "Since you've killed Wang Chun, I'll kill you to pay for Wang Chen's death." These three old dogs are indeed jackals of the same tribe. According to the rules of the ancient path of the starry sky, the elders are not allowed to interfere in the grudges of the younger generation. Even if I kill him, it's because he's not as strong as me. Yifei was also furious. One had to know that this ancient path of the starry sky was painstakingly opened by the martial emperors and martial gods of the Tianwu continent to nurture the younger generation of martial artists. In the end, the Scorching Sun sect and the other Starry Sky sect had forcefully occupied this place. Not only did they plunder everyone's treasures, but they were also openly distorting the truth and breaking the rules of the ancient path of the Starry Sky. This was a humiliation that no martial artist of the Tianwu continent could tolerate. The gray-haired elder in the middle seemed to have seen the source of Yi Fei's anger. He immediately sneered disdainfully and threw out a huge flaming palm as well. He said disdainfully, "A bunch of trash from the continent. Are you worthy of talking about rules with me? Let me tell you, on the ancient path of the Starry Sky, our words are the rules. If we violate the rules, you lowly commoners from the continent will be punished with death. Just kill him. Why bother talking nonsense with him? Killing a lowly commoner is like stepping on an ant. What's the difference?" The scarred elder in the end suddenly burst out with flames all over his body. He actually merged with the huge flaming palms sent out by the other two, forming a flame that was even bigger than the entire Scorching Sun city. The huge palm slammed down on Yifei. This was the attack of a heaven-grade quasi-emperor. With a raise of his hand, he could destroy a huge imperial capital. It was like the end of the world. When they saw the huge flaming palm descending, who knew how many martial artists were so frightened that their faces turned pale? It was as if their souls were about to dissipate. At this moment, Yifei could not help but feel a deep sense of fear. However, at this moment, he no longer represented himself alone. He represented all the martial artists of the Tianwu continent. If he retreated, he would only be looked down upon by these Starry Sky sections. However, at the same time, if he could block the attack of a heaven-grade quasi-emperor, his name would definitely shake the Starry Sky. He would be able to ruthlessly slap the faces of these Starry Sky sects. For the sake of the Tianwu continent, for the sake of the dignity that we once lost, I will go all out in this battle. Bloodline divine armor, burn for me. Yifei's eyes turned scarlet. At this moment, he did not hold back at all. He completely ignited the demonic blood in his body. As he ignited it, a mysterious armor instantly covered Yifei. When the armor covered Yifei, it actually turned him from a black-clothed youth into a mysterious blood-armored general. Just like that, Yifei stood proudly in the sky without moving at all before the fearful and gloating gazes of the countless martial artists. He allowed the huge flaming palm to completely envelop him. Boom! When the giant flaming palm landed, the entire starry sky started to tremble violently. Terrifying cracks started to appear in the void. In the end, even the void was ignited by these terrifying flames, forming a raging inferno. The divine flame and the high temperature were enough to burn an entire mountain range to ashes. This was the Scorching Sun sect's famous burning mountain fire. Once there was a sect that had offended the Scorching Sun sect. The entire sect, including hundreds of martial monarchs and dozens of quasi-emperors, were all burned to ashes by this move. However, at this moment, before the shocked and horrified gazes of countless martial artists, Yifei stood proudly in this raging inferno like a sharp sword. He was actually unharmed. Boom! This unexpected result caused many martial artists to suspect that they had fallen into an illusion. The three heaven-grade quasi-emperors who attacked widened their eyes in shock. This is impossible. Even if he is also a heaven-grade quasi-emperor, he would not be able to block our attacks so easily. Why is it impossible? Don't use your narrow vision to judge the martial artists of the Tianwu continent. This is because in our eyes, you are just a bunch of self-satisfied frogs at the bottom of a well. Chapter 1556. The boundless flames that filled the starry heavens could not burn Yi Fei's body. The rage of the three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors could not suppress Yi Fei's firm spine. Amid the raging flames, Yi Fei's divine armor gave off a dazzling light. It was very stunning. The surrounding cultivators were all frightened. Who could have imagined that the all-out attack of three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors would end up like this? The three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors were thoroughly enraged. Even though the three of them attacked together, they could not kill a half-martial monarch junior. This was simply an invisible slap to their faces. The white-haired old man was so angry that his face turned red. He roared, "Evil creature, what did you use? What method did you use to neutralize our attacks? Quickly hand over the method. How preposterous! You're just a lowly commoner of the continent. You merely blocked a casual move from us. What is there to be arrogant about? How dare you be disrespectful to us?" A huge rage appeared on the gray-haired old man's body. This rage shook the starry heavens and dimmed the stars. Kill! The scar-faced old man directly attacked. A blazing sun slowly rose from his palm. Then it turned into a scarlet fireball that burned the entire starry heavens. At this moment, it was like a raging fire burning the world. This heaven-ranked quasi-emperor's rage and murderous intent blasted into the sea of flames in front of him. The surrounding cultivators exclaimed again. Of course, they knew that the three quasi-emperors were completely enraged this time. Their attacks would definitely be even more terrifying. Even many of the older martial emperors in the crowd, who were watching the battle, felt their hearts tremble. They were all terrified by such an attack. However, what terrified them even more was the figure standing proudly in the raging flames. Even when facing such a terrifying blazing sun attack, Yi Fei still did not take a step back. At this moment, before the shocked gazes of the crowd, he took a firm step forward. Yi Fei shouted coldly, "Bullying the weak? What kind of ability is that? Do you dare to fight with me at the same cultivation realm? I can kill you three old dogs with one hand." Impudent. The white-haired old man was so angry that he went crazy. Arrogant bastard. At this moment, the gray-haired old man's reverse scale was touched. Of course, they would not be so foolish as to give up their powerful strength and fight with Yi Fei at the same cultivation realm. Blazing sun divine palm. Blazing mountain burning raging flames. Subsequently, the two heaven-grade quasi-emperors roared at the same time. In their fury, they mobilized all their strength. This kind of strength was enough to destroy an imperial capital in an instant. At the same time, the sturdy starry sky was blasted apart, creating a terrifying void zone. But it was also at this time that an even stronger bloodline aura appeared on Yi Fei's body. Raging blood flames also completely ignited Yi Fei at this time. Under everyone's horrified gazes, Yi Fei strode forward. The blazing sun from the starry sky exploded on his body. Whistling flames burned the starry sky red, but they were unable to burn Yi Fei's body. The bloodline divine armor could block the attacks of martial emperors. As long as he had the divine armor, the attacks of these heaven-ranked quasi-emperors would not be able to harm him. The three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors also looked at the blood-flame divine armor on Yi Fei's body in horror. For the first time, their expressions turned grave. Then, they became incomparably greedy. In the end, they were heaven-ranked quasi-emperors. They quickly noticed that Yi Fei's blood-flame divine armor was different from others. So that's how it is. He is burning his bloodline to activate some kind of extremely strong defensive martial technique. Humph! Do you think that burning your bloodline is enough? Even the bloodline of a peerless genius can only last for an hour before his bloodline runs dry and he dies. An insignificant half-martial monarch dares to provoke us heaven-ranked quasi-emperors. How unwise and arrogant. If we don't kill this brat, how will we maintain our dignity? How will our scorching sun sex reputation survive? Kill. Without hesitation, the white-haired old man attacked again. He no longer attacked from afar. Instead, he used his flames to condense a huge flaming spear. As he thrust the flaming spear forward, divine flames flew into the starry heavens like sparks. "Evil creature, go to hell." The flaming robes of the gray-haired old man instantly burned. His body also seemed to be reborn from the flames. He turned from a skinny old man to a muscular middle-aged man. This person raised a huge axe that could split mountains. As the axe swung down, the entire starry heavens trembled violently. It seemed like they were about to collapse. Roar! Finally, the scar-faced old man opened his mouth and spat out an even more terrifying five-color divine flame. This divine flame burned through the starry heavens, creating terrifying pits of fire. With a whoosh, it condensed into a huge fire dragon, fire horse, fire lion, and fire snake, forming a terrifying army of fire beasts. They completely engulfed Yi Fei. Yi Fei immediately felt a shocking killing intent from these three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors. However, he still did not retreat. Although the blood flame divine armor could temporarily block the attacks of the heaven-ranked quasi-emperors, once his bloodline ran dry, he would die without the need for the heaven-ranked quasi-emperors to do anything. However, since he had to fight, and he had to fight for the reputation of the Tianwu continent, for his own dignity, he would absolutely not shrink back. Just as the three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors charged at him, a ruthless and frenzied light flashed in Yi Fei's eyes. After preparing for so many years, now is the time to break through the final step. Break through to the 9th layer of the battle god Tao. Rumble. True Yuan roared in Yi Fei's body like a huge wave or a landslide. The huge power allowed him to instantly break through his limits. A new deities will formed in Yi Fei's soul, allowing him to instantly step into the 9th layer of the battle god Tao. Then, Yi Fei directly ignored the attacks of the three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors. He actually sat cross-legged in the starry heavens and directly undid the true Spirit 9 transformations, starting the 6th fusion of despair. At this instant, the heavenly Tao sensed Yi Fei's aura again. Suddenly, a boundless and terrifying pressure appeared in the starry heavens. This pressure caused even martial emperors to feel fear. All the cultivators' expressions changed. Heavenly Tao. This is the aura of the heavenly Tao. Is this brat crazy? He actually dares to undergo the martial emperor tribulation right under our noses? No, this is not the martial emperor tribulation. Heavens, what kind of tribulation is this? How did it condense so quickly? It actually covered an area of 10,000 meters. The three heaven-ranked quasi-emperors were so frightened that their souls almost dissipated. One had to know that the heavenly tribulation usually covered a small area and only targeted the person undergoing the tribulation. For Yi Fei's heavenly tribulation to cover an area of 10,000 meters, only a martial emperor's tribulation could be so exaggerated. Chapter 1557. The Sea of Lightning instantly caused several powerful martial emperors and quasi-emperors who were still standing within the range of the Sea of Lightning to scream in terror. Their bodies were charred black by the electricity. Of course, those who dared to stand so close were all martial artists of the Scorching Sun sect. They had wanted to watch the three elders kill Yi Fei from a close distance, but now they could only hate Yi Fei for being so shameless. Not only did he risk his own life to pass the tribulation, he even dragged them along with him. One must know that this was a heavenly tribulation that could destroy everything. At this moment, these martial artists of the Scorching Sun sect wished that they could grow a few more legs so that they could run faster. However, before they could run out, a loud boom reverberated through the starry sky and spread far and wide. This was the Heavenly Way's wrath. The previous Heavenly Way's punitive expedition did not manage to kill Yi Fei, but Yi Fei's heaven-defying act of fusing with the power of despair had become a thorn in the side of the Heavenly Way. Therefore, the moment it sensed Yi Fei's aura, the Heavenly Way let out a thunderous roar of rage. Immediately after, Countless warriors in the sky were shocked to see a majestic palace appear at the end of the void. Inside, there seemed to be a golden god roaring angrily. Following this roar, the 10,000-meter-wide sea of thunder and lightning immediately swept up an incomparably terrifying wave of thunder and lightning that pounced towards thunder. All life in the sea of lightning. The group of martial artists of the Scorching Sun sect who tried to escape the sea of lightning were instantly annihilated by these violent thunderbolts. Regardless of whether they were martial emperors or ordinary quasi-emperors, none of them could withstand the devastation of this sea of lightning. The three heaven quasi-emperors also stared blankly at the dead martial artists. Many of these people were their disciples and grand-disciples. In the end, a single heavenly tribulation had annihilated them all. What a lunatic! This brat is so shameless and vicious. My disciples and grand-disciples, you all died so tragically. If I don't kill this brat today, I swear that I'm not human. Yes, quickly kill him. Quickly kill this bastard. The sea of lightning that filled the sky could not harm the three heaven-grade quasi-emperors. At the same time, a blazing heaven-grade domain appeared on their bodies, forming a ring of blazing fire that separated them from the sea of lightning around them. Then, the three of them charged at Yi Fei with bloodshot eyes and incomparable rage. They did not want Yi Fei to be killed by the heavenly tribulation. They had to kill Yi Fei with their own hands before the heavenly tribulation was fully formed. Seeing the three quasi-emperors' actions, Yi Fei laughed coldly. The current him was no longer the same as before. He was always forced into a corner and could only hastily undergo the tribulation. For this tribulation, he had prepared for as long as a year. How could he be so easily interrupted by these three people? You three old dogs, come with me if you have the guts. Boom! Yi Fei did not have a cultivation technique to tangle with these three heaven quasi-emperors. In any case, he could not defeat them. Since he had already started the heavenly tribulation, he naturally had to maximize the effects of the heavenly tribulation. Even if he died in the heavenly tribulation, he would make these starry sky sects pay a heavy price for their arrogance. This was Yi Fei's plan. At this moment, the moment the heavenly tribulation appeared, he activated the Great Void technique and charged directly toward blazing Sun City in the distance. Boom, boom, boom. His actions undoubtedly enraged the heavenly Tao. This horrifying heavenly tribulation caused many of the martial artists 10,000 meters away to turn pale and vomit blood continuously. Not to mention, the three heaven quasi-emperors who were chasing Yi Fei also vomited blood involuntarily. On the other hand, Yi Fei did not pay much attention to the sea of lightning as his bloodline divine armor was still burning. Yi Fei was not particularly concerned about the sea of lightning. The Great Void technique also raised Yi Fei's speed to the limit. Although he was still more than 100 miles away from Blazing Sun City, Yi Fei rushed out of Blazing Sun City in a breath's time. However, what terrified him was that no matter how fast he moved, the heavenly tribulation in the void was still firmly locked onto him. From afar, it was no longer Yi Fei moving in the starry sky, but a terrifying sea of lightning that spanned 10,000 meters. The lightning was like a vast ocean, rolling up terrifying waves. In the void, as the tribulation cloud was completely formed, a terrifying thunderstorm swept up. In the starry sky, there were terrifying lightning rays, each of which was as thick as a bucket. Each of them was enough to electrocute a martial sage expert instantly. Charcoal. The three heaven quasi-emperors had stayed in the starry sky for their entire lives and had seen many martial artists undergo the heavenly tribulation. However, they had never seen such a terrifying heavenly tribulation. No, this is no longer a heavenly tribulation. This is a catastrophe for our Blazing Sun sect. That idiot Wang Chun. Why did he provoke such a lunatic? Oh my God. What sin did this lad commit to attract such a terrifying heavenly tribulation as punishment? No, don't come over. I beg you, don't come over. Compared to the shock of the three heaven quasi-emperors, the martial artists who were still in blazing Sun City were scared out of their wits. Who had ever seen such a ridiculous heavenly tribulation? Who had ever seen such a reckless heavenly tribulation? Under the pursuit of the three heaven quasi-emperors, not only did Yi Fei undergo the heavenly tribulation crazily, but what was even crazier was that Yi Fei directly brought the heavenly tribulation from 100 miles away to blazing Sun City in an instant. This caused the guards of the Blazing Sun sect to not even have the time to activate the restriction array to block Yi Fei. They could only watch in horror. A terrifying sea of thunder and lightning appeared in the sky above blazing Sun City. The violent thunder and lightning and the terrifying rain of lightning instantly turned blazing Sun City into a scene of carnage. Everywhere, there were guards who had been electrocuted into charcoal and disciples of the Blazing Sun sect who were scared out of their wits and running away pathetically. Suddenly, a loud roar was heard from blazing Sun City. The statue of a majestic elder in a fiery robe was suddenly completely submerged by the sea of thunder and lightning. The entire statue was blasted into pieces. Puff! When the three heaven quasi-emperors who had rushed over saw this scene, they were so angry that they vomited blood on the spot. That statue is the statue of the founder of our Blazing Sun sect. It's him. He led our Blazing Sun sect to kill all the guardians here and monopolize this ancient starry sky city. Now, the statue of our ancestor has been destroyed. Ah, sinners! We are all sinners of the Blazing Sun sect. We have let down our ancestor and the Blazing Sun sect. The gray-haired elder was so angry that tears streamed down his face. The scars on the scar-faced elder's face were twisting like poisonous snakes. Originally, the three of them were a little worried when they saw Yi Fei undergoing the tribulation. After all, if they attacked Yi Fei now, they would definitely be attacked by the tribulation. However, when they saw Yi Fei bring the tribulation into Blazing Sun City to wreak havoc and destroy the statue of the founder of the Blazing Sun City, they instantly went crazy when they saw the statue of the founder of the Blazing Sun sect. We must kill this person today. The gray-haired elder's face was ferocious as the flames on his body lit up the starry sky. Roar! The gray-haired elder let out a beast-like roar. Not only must we kill him, but we must also kill his friends, family, and everyone related to him. Yes, we must eliminate the source of trouble. If we don't kill this person, our Blazing Sun sect will definitely lose our dignity and become the laughingstock of the starry sky. The enraged sect leader will definitely kill us. At the mention of the Scorching Sun sect master, both the gray-haired elder and the scar-faced elder trembled in fear. Then, they looked at Yi Fei with eyes that were as cold as venomous snakes, ready to devour their prey. Chapter 1558. Success. The divine armor has been broken. Let's see how he can block our attacks this time. Yi Fei, it's time for you to die. The three heaven-level quasi-emperors were ecstatic. They believed that without the protection of the divine armor, killing Yi Fei would be as easy as killing an ant with their strength. That was indeed the case. Without the divine armor, Yi Fei was no match for the heaven-level quasi-emperors with his current strength. Even if he used his undying sword soul, he could only block one attack from the heaven-level quasi-emperors. However, they neglected one point. Since I can't win, why should I fight? Escaping from the attacks of three heaven-level quasi-emperors is not shameful. Instead, it is my ability. Great Void Technique. The moment the divine armor broke, Yi Fei had already merged with the void. Then, he took a step forward and charged toward the tribulation clouds. His craziness shocked the three heaven-level quasi-emperors. Their faces were filled with horror. When faced with a heavenly tribulation, all the cultivators in the world were the same. They would stand under the heavenly tribulation and allow the tribulation clouds to descend before resisting. However, to charge directly into the tribulation clouds like Yi Fei was not just crazy. He was completely looking down on the heavenly Tao. This was not just defying the heavens, but directly going against the heavens. Rumble. Following Yi Fei's actions, the entire starry sky shook. The entire sea of lightning was enraged. Countless bolts of lightning formed thick electric snakes that charged toward Yi Fei from all directions. The power contained within could even kill a quasi-emperor. However, Yi Fei continued to advance. He continued to charge toward the strongest and densest heavenly tribulation clouds in the void. At the same time, the undying sword soul in his body instantly awakened. Under Yi Fei's control, it formed a terrifying vortex of destruction. This vortex could devour lightning and absorb the power of the heavenly tribulation. In the eyes of the three sky quasi-emperors, Yi Fei's action was undoubtedly suicide. However, in Yi Fei's eyes, the power of these heavenly tribulations was a powerful energy that could be converted into thunder tribulation liquid. It was just that the surrounding heavenly tribulation energy was too strong. Although the undying sword soul could absorb a large amount of heavenly tribulation energy and convert it into precious heavenly tribulation liquid, most of the lightning bolts struck Yi Fei directly. Even though Yi Fei had broken through to Battle Demon Path Stage 9, he still felt his body trembling. A sharp pain came from his body. The intense lightning caused his muscles to spasm and his bones to tremble. But just as these lightning bolts were trying to destroy him, the undying sword soul suddenly released a large amount of lightning tribulation liquid, rapidly repairing his body. From an outsider's point of view, Yi Fei was being bombarded by the heavenly tribulation and was in an incomparably miserable state. However, in reality, Yi Fei had only suffered superficial injuries. Inside his pitch-black body, his flesh, blood, and cells were constantly shining like stars, emitting light, causing Yi Fei to be stunned. He withstood the bombardment of countless lightning bolts. In the end, he even sat down cross-legged in the depths of the 10,000-meter tribulation cloud and used his physical body to withstand the heavenly tribulation. At the same time, he continuously used the undying sword soul to absorb the power of the heavenly tribulation. Rumble. Yi Fei's current actions were no longer as simple as undergoing a tribulation. He was completely provoking the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao was merciless, and the lightning was furious. They discovered that even the sea of lightning in the sky couldn't erase Yi Fei's heaven-defying actions. At the end of the void, a golden palace formed by lightning appeared. Inside the palace, there were many golden lightning figures. Then, a figure walked out from the palace and appeared in front of the crowd, in the sky above the 10,000-meter sea of lightning. With the appearance of this god, the pressure on the entire blazing sun city suddenly increased by several times, instantly forcing Yi Fei to stop absorbing the power of the heavenly tribulation. The three heaven quasi-emperors who had followed closely behind and were about to attack Yi Fei again were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They even suspected that their old eyes were playing tricks on them. What did they see? They actually saw a golden god walking out of the heavenly palace in the tribulation cloud. The more frightening thing was that the instant this god appeared, it emitted a supreme might that was comparable to a heaven quasi-emperor's. Under this might, the white-haired old man suddenly felt a fear that made his soul tremble. The wrath of the gods. This is the legendary wrath of the heavenly Tao. How can it be the wrath of the gods? That brat is not even a martial monarch. What sin did he commit? To think that he attracted the wrath of the gods when he was only a half-martial emperor. One had to know that such a special heavenly tribulation could only be encountered when one was breaking through to martial emperor. However, Yi Fei actually encountered it when he was only a half-martial emperor. The three heaven quasi-emperors' faces turned ashen. They were so regretful that their intestines turned green. If we had known that this brat's tribulation was so terrifying, even if we had to sacrifice our lives, we would have stopped him from triggering the heavenly tribulation. Vile being, shameless, despicable, shameless. This is simply a trap to lure us in. It's fine if he is risking his life, but what right does he have to drag us down with him? Yi Fei, I hate you. Even if I become a ghost, I won't let you off. The moment the god appeared, the scar-faced old man's will crumbled. This was because the moment the god appeared, it had already sent a thunderous palm flying towards him. At the same time, two more golden gods walked out of the heavenly palace. They were not real gods, but were created by the heavenly tribulation to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. However, even if they were nothingness, the moment these three gods, who were comparable to heaven quasi-emperors, appeared, the entire starry sky crumbled. Too bad. At this moment, the three heaven-stage quasi-emperors were no longer in the mood to chase after Yi Fei. They all acted as if they were facing a great enemy as they stared at the three terrifying lightning deities. At the same time, they all madly cursed that Yi Fei would die a horrible death. At the same time, they all risked their lives to charge at the three lightning deities. Boom! Boom! A violent explosion suddenly came from the starry sky. The attack of the six heaven quasi-emperors caused the huge meteorite below to shake violently. Then, Yi Fei saw three figures vomiting blood. They were in an extremely sorry state as they were blasted down from the meteorite from the starry sky. Three huge craters were formed on the meteorite as well. What are the three of you doing? You are heaven quasi-emperors after all. How can you not block a single strike from the heavenly tribulation? Yi Fei was speechless. However, his heart was filled with shock. No one knew better than him how strong these three elders of the Scorching Sun sect were. However, even they were unable to block a single strike from these gods. If these gods were to join forces and attack him now, wouldn't he not even be able to retaliate? While feeling terrified, Yi Fei almost instinctively wanted to use the Great Void technique to teleport to a safer distance. However, just as he was about to teleport, a thunderous sound rang out. Chapter 1559. Bam! Yi Fei was no longer able to enter the void and make use of his speed advantage. The young man's gaze had the power to confine space and had actually broken his Great Void technique. Then, the instant Yi Fei lost his speed advantage, a thunderous sword appeared in the young man's hand. The sword light flashed, and it was the heavenly Tao thunderbolt. The sea of lightning went berserk at this moment. Amidst the berserk lightning, a sword light that Yi Fei was incomparably familiar with condensed. That is the sword light of the Taiji dual swords. This golden deity not only replicated my cultivation level, he also replicated my martial arts. No, this is impossible. What kind of heavenly tribulation is this? It is clearly an illusory life formed by the heavenly tribulation. Why is he able to use all of my martial arts? And all of them are the most perfect ones. I can't accept this. I hate this. Not far away, the three heaven quasi-emperors also roared in anger. They had lost miserably not because their skills were inferior, but because the heavenly tribulation had also replicated everything about them and condensed them into a golden deity. In turn, this golden deity was using this replica to kill the original. After all, the most difficult thing to defeat was not the enemy, but oneself. When he saw that familiar Taiji radiance slashing towards him, Yi Fei was also shocked. There was a moment of fear and panic in his heart. However, this panic only lasted for a moment. Within the beast mark space, Xiao Chao's encouragement helped Yi Fei pull himself together again. His gaze became even more resolute as he thought in a deep voice, "It's useless to be afraid now. I still have Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle with me. I'm not fighting alone. Even if my opponent is myself, kill, kill, kill. Fight, 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 fight." Taiji dual swords. Yi Fei let out a loud roar. Sword light shot up from his body and shook off the sea of lightning. At the same time, he also broke free from the surrounding void shackles. His battle intent was once again high. As the spirit-devouring sword slashed forward, a huge Taiji sword diagram immediately brought with it the power to suppress the void. He slashed at the deity. The god on the other side roared, just like Yi Fei. However, what he roared was the fury of the heavenly Tao. It was a terrifying thunderbolt. Then, The thunderbolt formed a Taiji sword diagram and clashed fiercely with Yi Fei's Taiji sword diagram. 8. Extreme Heavenly Dragon. However, before the outcome of the battle could be decided, Yi Fei let out another roar. The roar of dragons shook the heavens as 8 heavenly dragons and 3 domains were released at the same time. Once again, he used all his strength to crush the immortal. It was also at this moment that a cold smile appeared on the deity's face. His body trembled, and a vast sea of lightning appeared. Within the sea of lightning, 8 golden lightning dragons appeared. They opened their mouths and spat out pillars of lightning. Within these pillars of lightning, there were 3 lightning domains that clashed fiercely with Yi Fei's 8 heavenly dragons. The starry sky rumbled violently. It was even more terrifying than the collapse of the heavens and the earth. It was a scene of the end of the world. Suddenly, the roar of a demon god came from behind Yi Fei. A terrifying demon god with 3 faces and 6 arms suddenly appeared. Its 6 arms waved in a strange and fast manner. 12 of them. This huge blood saber suddenly attacked in a situation where both sides were evenly matched. It wanted to cut the deity into pieces. A cold smile suddenly appeared on the deity's face. There was no demon god behind him. However, there was the roar of the azure dragon, the roar of the white tiger, the cry of the vermilion bird, and the rage of the black tortoise. At this moment, the deity used the incomplete immemorial celestial art of the 4 aspects of Zhenwu to destroy the demon first. The deity charged towards Yi Fei. How is this possible? Yi Fei's heart trembled violently. He thought that this godly being would only use the martial arts that he had used before. However, this wasn't the case. When this godly being appeared, he had already copied all the martial arts that he knew and even surpassed them. For example, although Yi Fei could use the 4 aspects of Zhenwu, he definitely couldn't release 4 different divine swords at the same time. However, not only did the deity do it, he did it perfectly. What appeared in front of Yi Fei was no longer the 4 aspects of Zhenwu. It was the 4 aspects of Zhenwu that Yi Fei had simulated countless times in his mind. At the same time, it was also the embryonic form of the 4 aspects of Tai Chi sword. I didn't expect that the deity manifested by the heavenly tribulation would not only be able to use the martial arts that I have learned, but he could also use the martial arts that I have not completed. This is really a pleasant surprise and cruel. Yi Fei smiled bitterly. His body was blasted back by the 4 aspects of Zhenwu, and he spat out 4 mouthfuls of blood. However, Yi Fei soon discovered that the deity manifested by the heavenly tribulation could copy all of his martial arts, but it wasn't invulnerable. At the very least, this deity isn't a real life. He can copy everything about me, but he can't copy my body or my soul. I haven't lost yet. I'm still alive. I still have hope. Come again. Kill. Yi Fei immediately changed his strategy when he realized that it was impossible for him to defeat this godly being with perfect martial arts. He no longer insisted on competing with martial arts. After all, compared to martial arts, his strongest point was still his fleshly body. His fleshly body was far stronger than a monarch weapon. At the same time, he had the black sword with him. This was a killing weapon forged by the stars. Its weight couldn't be replicated by the heavenly tribulation. This was Yi Fei's advantage, and also the biggest difference between Yi Fei and his replicated body. Kill. Yi Fei's eyes turned red as he charged forward again. The cold deity also reacted instantly. He raised his huge lightning sword, and endless lightning transformed into 4 different divine swords: the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. Then, these 4 swords simultaneously slashed at Yi Fei with the Taiji as the center. A dazzling Taiji sword diagram suddenly appeared in front of the deity. Not only did this deity replicate the 4 aspect sword that Yi Fei was still deducing, but he also recreated it in a short period of time. He directly skipped the long deduction stage and displayed the real 4 aspects of Taiji. Sword. This was simply an unimaginable thing. Even a martial god wouldn't be able to deduce things so quickly. However, after thinking about it carefully, this was reasonable. After all, the heavenly Tao had the ability to deduce things, and it was an endless deduction. Yifei only had a vague thought in his mind. After the deity sensed his thought, he could immediately deduce it through the heavenly Tao. This was a deity that couldn't be achieved by humans. However, even if you were a deity, I will still kill you. Bloodline, burn for me. Starlight, appear for me. Yifei was completely ruthless as he brandished his black sword. Although his martial arts might not be a match for the deity, he didn't believe that he wouldn't be a match for the heavenly tribulation's puppet in terms of physical strength. Boom! As his bloodline burned, the originally ordinary and heavy black sword suddenly erupted with dazzling starlight. This light shattered the starry sky and tore through the void. Finally, it was in Yifei's hands and continuously smashed at the deity in front of him. This was the light of the four aspects sword of Taiji. Chapter 1560. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky above blazing Sun City, the black sword flickering with starlight kept smashing forward. When this sword embryo ignited its bloodline, it immediately erupted with an incomparably terrifying offensive power. This offensive power could easily shatter an Earth-grade domain and even injure a Heaven-grade quasi-emperor. However, this was not the case at all. In the face of the Taiji defense, formed by the Taiji four-phase swords, the power of the black sword was greatly weakened. Even though the light of the Taiji sword diagram was constantly dimming under Yifei's crazy attacks, the dimmer the light, the more dangerous the aura contained within it made Yifei's hair stand on end. One must know that Taiji represented far more than just defense. The Taiji four-phase swords that he had deduced back then were not used for defense, but for an instant attack after the defense, to achieve the limit of a delayed attack. Therefore, the moment the light of the Taiji sword diagram dimmed to its limit, Yifei decisively put away the black sword and suddenly moved at his fastest speed. He dodged to the side. Boom! As he dodged, the originally dim Taiji sword diagram suddenly exploded as Yifei expected. All of Yifei's attacks were absorbed and condensed by the Taiji sword diagram at this moment, and all of them exploded in an instant. Even Yifei felt a sense of terror from the power of the Taiji sword diagram. He tried his best to dodge, but the Taiji four-phase swords executed by the deity was too perfect. It was so perfect that even with Yifei's speed, he could not completely avoid the impact of the sword light. He felt as if he had been smashed by the heavy black sword. Blood spurted wildly from his mouth as all the bones in his body were shattered and shifted. In merely an instant, Yifei was seriously injured by the deity's perfect martial skill. In fact, Yifei even suspected that if it wasn't for the fact that his physical body had already surpassed the limits of an imperial armament and approached the level of a half-god artifact, he might have died on the spot from that attack. However, Yifei was not the most miserable one. The three heaven-grade quasi-emperors of the Scorching Sun sect were the most miserable. They had originally thought that Yifei's heavenly tribulation was merely the sea of lightning. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that the sea of lightning was merely the prelude to this heavenly tribulation. When the true heavenly tribulation appeared, the heavenly Tao would be furious and gods would descend. Only then did they begin to feel fear and regret. They regretted that they had let their anger get to their heads and actually ran into such a terrifying heavenly tribulation. Under the attack of the deity, Yifei was able to rely on his immortal sword soul and strong physical body to withstand the deity's attack. As for the three elders of the Scorching Sun sect, even though they were heaven-grade quasi-emperors, their physical bodies were only comparable to emperor weapons. Moreover, they were facing a perfect clone just like Yifei. As a result, they were seriously injured by their clones in one move. And while Yifei was injured, their injuries worsened. Among them, the white-haired elder let out a blood-curdling scream. He had unleashed all of his cultivation but was still unable to defeat his clone. In the end, he could only see a giant flaming palm mercilessly engulfing him and turning him into ashes. Oh no, the Great Elder is dead. He's actually dead. This damned heavenly tribulation, damned Yi Fei, let me out. I won't kill him anymore. I won't kill him anymore. The white-haired elder's death caused the gray-haired elder to panic. In the face of the terrifying wrath of the deity, he had completely lost the confidence to battle. He desperately tried to escape from the heavenly tribulation. In the end, he succeeded in escaping. A smile of relief appeared on his face. However, his smile instantly froze on his face. The deity actually chased him out of the heavenly tribulation and even pierced his body with a flaming spear. It was only at this moment that the gray-haired elder realized that Yi Fei wasn't undergoing a tribulation. He was simply playing with his life. Obviously, the deities formed by the heavenly tribulation were very special. They could ignore the range of the heavenly tribulation and chase their opponents to the ends of the earth. They would either kill their opponents or be killed by them. This was the wrath of the deity. Once the heavenly Tao was enraged, it wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. There was no such thing as luck. Only one of them could survive. At the same time that the gray-haired elder died, the domain of the last elder with a scar on his face suddenly shattered. Then, his entire body was hit by a terrifying ray of scorching sun. The scorching sun didn't just burn his body, it also ignited his soul. This old man is filled with hatred. The heavens are unfair. This old man died a wrongful death. In the end, the last heaven-level quasi-emperor was no match for his own clone and died tragically in the heavenly tribulation. He did not lose to a deity, but to himself. Many of the cultivators that escaped Blazing Sun City were in a daze. They were terrified of the horror of the heavenly Tao's wrath, and even more terrified of Yi Fei, who could trigger the heavenly Tao's wrath. Just as the three heavenly Tao quasi-emperors died with grievances, someone shouted. The cultivators that were still here, regardless of whether they were martial monarchs or quasi-emperors, all turned and fled. They were already completely terrified of Yi Fei. They were afraid that Yi Fei would deal with the three heavenly Tao quasi-emperors in his despair. If he did that, he would drag them into this terrifying heavenly tribulation and die with them. This kind of heavenly tribulation is not meant for humans to undergo. It is meant for gods and demons. Dead. They're all dead. This Blazing Sun City is most likely going to be finished soon. Let's leave quickly. That Yi Fei is a complete demon. When he discovers that he cannot overcome the heavenly tribulation, he will definitely drag us down with him in his madness. Hearing the words of the fleeing cultivators, Yi Fei could not help but smile bitterly despite his severe injuries. He was clearly an honest person, the holy son of the true martial sacred courtyard. Why was it that no matter where he went, people would misunderstand him as a demon? Could it be that I really have the talent to become a demon? Yi Fei could not help guessing. Then his body trembled as his undying sword soul absorbed the heavenly tribulation. The heavenly tribulation liquid released instantly entered his body and healed his injuries. Kill! Yi Fei roared. Even though he saw the three heavenly Tao quasi-emperors die in battle and saw countless cultivators flee in fear, he did not lose his confidence. The flames of battle burned fiercely on his body. The surging demonic blood in his body boiled. So what if it is a deity? So what if it is the heavenly Tao? If I cannot even defeat a puppet of the heavenly Tao, how can I break through to martial monarch? How can I reach the peak of the martial Tao? I want to fight. Boom! His blood burned once again. Yi Fei brandished his black sword again and charged forward crazily. His black sword became even more ruthless and heavier, as if it wanted to shatter the starry sky and everything in front of him. The heavenly Tao was also enraged. Aside from the deity who had killed the three quasi-emperors, who slowly disappeared under the laws of heaven and earth, the only one left was Yi Fei's clone. At this moment, his body formed by lightning suddenly released a dazzling sword light. The Taiji Four Phases sword attacked again, mercilessly slashing at Yi Fei. Fei. Chapter 1561. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was around, Yi Fei finally revealed his final killing move. He did not believe that the replica of the heavenly tribulation was so heaven-defying that it could even perfectly replicate the destructive sword chi of the undying sword soul. Therefore, Yi Fei brazenly attacked and instantly used his strongest attack. The black sword in his hand also unleashed a terrifying destructive sword light. This ray of light pierced through the starry sky and completely shattered the deity's Taiji Four Phases sword. However, just as Yi Fei was filled with joy and thought that the undying sword soul would definitely be able to kill this deity, rumble. The entire sea of lightning suddenly boiled as boundless lightning was sucked into the deity's body. Instantly, it burned like flames. Looking at the burning flames, Yi Fei felt as though he had been splashed with a bucket of cold water. His hands and feet turned cold. How could I forget that I have the undying sword soul? However, the attack of the sword soul is only equivalent to that of a heaven great boundary emperor. On the other hand, the bloodline godly armor that I have condensed by burning my bloodline is able to withstand a blow from a martial emperor. No matter how strong my sword soul is, it will not be able to kill this deity. Yi Fei's face was filled with bitterness. He could only watch as the destructive sword chi slashed the deity's body. However, it was blocked by the burning bloodline godly armor. At this moment, no matter how strong his fighting spirit and confidence were, he could not help but be shaken. For the first time, he started to hate himself for being so powerful. If he had been just a little bit weaker, his undying sword soul would have been able to kill this deity. It's true that success depends on the divine armor, and failure depends on the divine armor. Could it be that I'm going to die here today, just like the other seniors who walked on the path of despair, unable to see any hope in the end, and only able to die on this path? Yi Fei suddenly felt somewhat dejected. He had to face the fact that although there was a chance of becoming the strongest martial god at the end of the path of despair, this path was filled with despair. Countless geniuses who were 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than Yi Fei had died on this path. Perhaps the sixth fusion will be the end of my path of despair. I can die, but I can't let Xiao Qiao die with me. Long Gui, take Xiao Qiao and run away immediately while I still have the strength to fight. Don't ever come back again. Yi Fei roared loudly. Roar! In the beast-marked space, the dragon tortoise's painful roar could be heard. Xiao Qiao took advantage of the dragon tortoise's carelessness and whipped it to the ground. Then, the dragon tortoise was determined to stay in the beast-marked space, refusing to leave even if it died. While Yi Fei was touched, he also felt helpless. If possible, he did not want to come to this point. But at this moment, he did not have the time to think too much. In the face of this god's almost perfect attack, he had no other choice but to prepare for the worst. Dragon Turtle, I'm counting on you to take care of Xiao Qiao from now on. Spiritual Sword. While his clone was still resisting the destructive sword aura of the undying sword soul, Yi Fei made a painful decision. He immediately activated his spiritual power and formed a spiritual rope. Suddenly, he rushed into the beast-marked space and imprisoned Xiao Qiao. Then, without saying a word, Yi Fei suddenly unleashed his strongest power. His eyes were red as he rushed towards the god once again. At this moment, he hugged the god fiercely. Long Gui, take Xiao Qiao away quickly. Yi Fei roared like an injured beast. He used all his strength and hugged the god like a hooligan on the streets. He desperately pushed the god back. In his opinion, the dragon tortoise would definitely seize this opportunity to take Xiao Qiao away from the heavenly tribulation as quickly as possible. However, Yi Fei did not expect this. His heart trembled because the dragon tortoise did not do so. While he was using all his strength and sacrificing himself to entangle and wrestle with the god, the dragon tortoise did not take Xiao Qiao away from the beastmark space. Instead, It took advantage of the fact that Xiao Chao had no time to care about it, and calmly bit down on the spiritual stones. Yi Fei felt an inexplicable sourness in his heart. I underestimated this damn turtle. Even at death's door, it still doesn't forget to bite down fiercely. Forget it. The dragon tortoise did not care about life and death. The victor has not been decided yet. How can I be discouraged now? Even if I can't defeat it, I will bite it. Bite off a piece of flesh. Although the god he was wrestling with did not have flesh, Yi Fei did not care. Because even if he could not bite off the other party's flesh, he would use the undying sword soul to absorb the other party's heavenly tribulation body one last time. At the same time, this was also the last counterattack Yi Fei could think of. If this method still did not work, then he would risk his life to throw Xiao Chao and the dragon tortoise out of the heavenly tribulation's range before he died. Success or failure depended on this one move. Undying sword soul absorb. Yi Fei roared like a wild beast. In an instant, the blood in his body was completely ignited. The bloodline godly armor also appeared on his body. No matter how crazily the god opposite him attacked, and how powerful his martial arts were, as long as Yi Fei's blood was not completely ignited and this god did not have an attack comparable to a martial emperor's. Just like how the undying sword soul could not kill the god with the bloodline godly armor, this god also could not kill Yi Fei with the bloodline godly armor. Instantly, in this sea of lightning, Yi Fei and the god were like heavily armored humanoid dragons. Since they could not kill each other in a short period of time, they simply wrestled with each other in this sea of lightning. They huddled together and kicked each other, punched each other, and bit each other. They would directly smash each other's heads. In the end, due to their tussle, the entire sea of lightning went berserk. Yi Fei and the deity fought each other, their eyes bloodshot. They rolled back into the boiling sea of lightning and continued to wrestle with their lives on the line. Soon, Yi Fei's body was covered in blood, and his entire face was covered in blood. His face was charred black by the god's lightning. His flesh and blood were flipped over, revealing the charred black bones inside. However, the deity wasn't having a good time either. During the fight, the undying sword spirit in Yi Fei's body was constantly absorbing the deity's energy. In the end, this deity wasn't a true life form. If it was, Yi Fei would have died without a doubt if it was a true life form. Unfortunately, this god was a puppet of the heavenly Tao. He could copy everything about Yi Fei. The only thing he could not copy was Yi Fei's life, Yi Fei's soul, and Yi Fei's unyielding will that was as firm as a boulder. This was no doubt a very special battle between life forms. At this moment, they were not competing in terms of strength, but their tenacious vitality. Would Yi Fei rely on the undying sword soul's ability to absorb all forms of energy to forcefully absorb this god's energy, or would this god rely on the body of the undying sword soul? The immense power of the heavenly tribulation would drag on until Yi Fei's blood ran out and he self-destructed. At this moment, even Yi Fei himself could not say for sure. He only knew that he had to fight. He had to fight. This was not only for himself, but also for Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle. Heavenly Tao, I'll fight you to the death today. I'll fight you to the death. Undying sword soul, absorb. Absorb with all your might. Boom! As if it had sensed Yi Fei's intentions, the undying sword soul started to tremble violently. It caused Yi Fei's entire body to turn into a terrifying vortex of destruction. Within this vortex, the god was struggling with all his might. The entire sea of lightning seemed to have come alive. Chapter 1562. Heavenly Tao, I can't beat you, but I can suck you to death. Yi Fei spat out a mouthful of blood and pointed his middle finger at the sky. It was a pity that the heavenly Tao was merciless and would not care about the provocation of an ant. The heavenly palace of thunder in the depths of the tribulation clouds seemed to have several deities roaring angrily. However, as Yi Fei completely refined the clone of himself, the power of the heavenly Tao was also gradually depleted. The first to disappear was the Thunder Celestial Palace in the void, followed by the terrifying tribulation clouds. Finally, the 10,000-meter-wide sea of lightning around Yi-Fei was attracted by the tribulation cloud vortex and wanted to return to the void. "Where are you going? I was struck so badly and almost lost all hope. How can I not pay some interest?" Yi-Fei was a little anxious. He had defeated the immortal, but it had been a Pyrrhic victory. At this moment, not only was his body a bloody mess, but a large amount of his bloodline had been consumed. Yi-Fei's lifespan had also been greatly reduced. If he didn't find a way to make up for this loss, he would become another Grand Supreme Dean. Although he had great talent, he would only be a hero past his prime in the face of a depleted lifespan. And the best way to make up for his lifespan was to use Thunder Tribulation Liquid. This was a special liquid formed by the power of the tribulation. It could increase one's lifespan and make up for the loss of Yi-Fei's bloodline. At this moment, Yi-Fei obviously wouldn't let the lightning return to the heavenly Tao vortex so easily. He immediately ignored the intense pain all over his body and directly activated the Great Void technique. With a step, he blocked the path of the tribulation cloud vortex. Boom! Yi-Fei's actions were undoubtedly a great disdain for the heavenly Tao. Even the emotionless heavenly Tao was infuriated. It seemed as if it didn't dare believe that there would actually be an ant that was so audacious in this world that was under the absolute control of the heaven Tao. Not only had he endured the heavenly tribulation, he'd actually blocked off this heavenly tribulation and intended to completely refine this sea of lightning. In the depths of the tribulation clouds, the heavenly tribulation vortex became even larger. It was as if a special heavenly tribulation black hole had formed in this starry sky. However, because Yi-Fei had already transcended the heavenly tribulation, the heavenly Tao was somewhat helpless against Yi-Fei, who was trying to pull a tooth from the tiger's mouth. At this moment, the only thing the heavenly Tao could do was to retrieve the sea of lightning formed by the power of the heavenly tribulation as quickly as possible. What Yi-Fei had to do was refine all the lightning before the power of the heavenly tribulation disappeared. Immortal Sword Soul, absorb. He sucked hard. When have I ever suffered such a loss? That immortal almost scared me to death. The heavenly Tao must compensate me. Compensate me severely. If the heavenly Tao won't compensate me, then I'll take it myself, Yi-Fei said with conviction. Yi-Fei already felt that he had suffered a great loss by not completely refining this heavenly tribulation. At this moment, he naturally had to absorb as much as he could while there was still no news from Lei Hai. The immortal Sword Soul had never eaten so much before. It had just absorbed a powerful immortal, and now it had to absorb a large amount of heavenly tribulation lightning. Luckily, this was a special sword soul left behind by the Nine-Heaven Swordmaster, who had surpassed a heavenly venerate. If it had been any other sword soul, Yi-Fei's crazy absorption would have caused the sword soul to collapse and be blown up by the terrifying power of the heavenly tribulation. Of course, it was also because of the immortal sword soul that Yi-Fei had been able to counterattack and successfully refine that immortal, transcend the heavenly tribulation, and complete the sixth fusion of the power of despair. However, the moment the fusion was completed, Yi-Fei immediately felt that his current talent was already at the peak of the top geniuses. At the same time, in terms of combat strength and domain, he had absolute confidence that he would be able to fight against an exceptional genius. Even if I can't defeat the exceptional geniuses, I'm confident that I won't be defeated. Although I'm still weaker than the exceptional geniuses in terms of strength, I've definitely surpassed them in terms of mental strength, not to mention that I have 4 Emperor-level domains. I also have the Immemorial Heaven skill and the Bloodline God. Oh right, the current me also has an even stronger sword. That is the Taiji 4 Phases sword. Taiji gave birth to Yin and Yang, and Yin and Yang gave birth to the 4 phases. After creating the Taiji Sword Dao and the Taiji Yin and Yang sword, Yi-Fei had always known that other than the Yin and Yang sword, there was also the 4 Phases sword. He had always been deducing but he had never been able to perfect it. It was only when that immortal used the heavenly Tao's deduction to perfectly execute the four phases sword that Yi Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. Suddenly, it lit up. While the immortal sword soul was still absorbing the power of the heavenly tribulation, Yi Fei did not stay idle. He began to sit cross-legged in front of the starry whirlpool, allowing the thousands of lightning bolts to surge through his body. He was like a reef in the middle of the sea, majestic and unmoving. His sword aura was like a mountain, like the sea, and even more so, like the abyss. Yi Fei began to recall and copy his immortal. The specific battle process, the stunning Taiji four phases sword, every movement, and every minute change. His brain began to operate frantically as he deduced. Boom! Sensing Yi Fei's movements, the immortal sword's soul suddenly began to burn. Blazing sword fire surrounded Yi Fei's body. Following that, large amounts of lightning bolts were absorbed by the immortal sword soul and transformed into drops of extremely precious lightning tribulation liquid, which surged into Yi Fei's body. Instantly, his dried-up blood vessels were filled with vitality. The white hair on his temples became as dazzling as the night sky. Yi Fei's eyes were no longer tired and old. Instead, they had regained their youthfulness and liveliness. At this moment, a terrifying sword shadow appeared in his eyes. These sword shadows were the countless details of the four phases sword that the immortal had once executed. At this moment, these details had all become incomparably mysterious sword patterns in Yi Fei's eyes. These sword patterns were the ultimate secret of the Taiji four phases sword. In the past, Yi Fei did not understand and was unable to deduce. However, after seeing the complete Taiji four phases sword, these complex sword patterns were no longer unsolvable to him. Just like that, the sword patterns were quickly uncovered and deduced by Yi Fei. They gradually merged into his own sword Tao. This process seemed to take a long time, but only about 2 hours had passed. As most of the lightning bolts in the surroundings surged into the starry whirlpool, they turned into nothingness. The heavenly tribulation disappeared, and the heavenly Tao disappeared without a trace. Boom! Suddenly, an incomparably terrifying sword Tao radiance erupted from Yi Fei's body. This radiance lit up the starry sky and also shook Yi Fei's heart. I understand now. What are the four phases? The combination of yin and yang, the combination of yin and yang, and the combination of both offense and defense. These are the four phases. This is also Taiji. Boom! Yi Fei drew his sword. He stood in the sky above blazing Sun City. His entire body was like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. Whistling sword light gathered in his hand as he swung the spirit-devouring sword. Suddenly, the Azure Dragon Divine Sword, White Tiger Divine Sword, Vermilion Bird Divine Sword, and Black Tortoise Divine Sword appeared in the sky above blazing Sun City. These four divine swords had different attributes, but at this moment, under the control of Taiji, they had achieved a miraculous balance. Chapter 1563. Yi Fei was very satisfied with the power of the Taiji four-phase sword. This was no longer an ordinary sword Tao, but a sword array Tao. The four divine swords formed a Taiji sword array with the Taiji as the core and could kill the enemy invisibly. Furthermore, this isn't the limit of the Taiji sword Tao. The Taiji sword Tao has yin and yang and four phases, so there must be 6 directions, 7 luminaries, 8 trigrams, 9 palaces. I still have a long way to go to perfect this sword Tao. There's still the purple gold Taiji, which I can't ignore. If the Taiji four-phase sword Tao represented the limit of the Taiji attack, then the purple gold Taiji represented the limit of the Taiji defense. However, it was too difficult to improve this kind of defense. The power of the Bloodline Divine Armor gave Yi Fei some inspiration. If I can integrate the Bloodline Divine Armor into my purple gold Taiji, then my Taiji defense will definitely become even more perfect. However, to achieve this goal, I have to integrate the despair power for the 7th time. Perhaps only then will I be able to find a way to integrate the two, Yi Fei said bitterly. He smiled and shook his head. He felt very depressed and had a headache. If I want to integrate the despair power for the 7th time, I have to find 1,000 spirit veins. That's 1,000 spirit veins. Even a martial emperor would be depressed to the point of vomiting blood if he saw such a terrifying number. Furthermore, this was an era where the martial Tao was declining. Yi Fei had only plundered over 30 spirit veins from the legalism sect, which had attracted the attention of countless factions in the Middle Continent. In the end, it had even attracted the attention of the demonic human hall master. If anyone knew that he had 1,000 spirit veins, Yi Fei reckoned that he would immediately turn into a pile of meat. Countless people would pounce on him with red eyes wherever he went, wanting to take a bite out of him. However, it's useless to worry about this now. I'll just take one step at a time and see how things go. In any case, everything will be fine when it comes to it. I can't be bothered to worry about it. Yi Fei was still rather careless in certain aspects. After worrying about it for a while, he put this matter aside. It was enough to make a martial emperor worry to death. Then, he excitedly prepared to rush in a blazing sun city to see if he could find any spirit veins of the blazing sun sect. However, all of a sudden, Yi Fei's consciousness shuddered. He sensed a familiar aura approaching Ardent Sun City cautiously. Yi Fei was a little surprised. He used his divine perception and said, "Little Sister Zhu, why haven't you left yet?" "Yi Fei, it's really you. You're actually still alive." Zhu Xiaomei's face was full of surprise. She immediately sped up and rushed over. Yi Fei was speechless. If it weren't for the fact that he wasn't familiar with Zhu Xiaomei, he would have definitely caught her and spanked her for comforting him like this. However, Zhu Xiaomei's arrival still made Yi Fei feel gratified, at least when everyone else thought that he would definitely die from God's wrath and go crazy before his death, dragging even more people down with him. Zhu Xiaomei was the only one who persisted and stayed. Yi Fei was very satisfied with this. He felt that Zhu Xiaomei was worth his time and effort in befriending her. Therefore, he didn't stand on ceremony and invited her directly. "Zhu Xiaomei, you came at the right time. Let's take advantage of the fact that everyone has escaped, and we can take advantage of this opportunity to plunder Blazing Sun City." "Hee, you found the right person. I'm definitely more familiar with Blazing Sun City than you are. I have a general idea of where the treasures are. I'll lead the way for you." Zhu Xiaomei didn't refuse. Instead, she accepted Yi Fei's good intentions. After that, she skipped ahead and led the way. She was very happy to have been able to deal a heavy blow to the Blazing Sun sect and take back the ancient Starry Sky City that originally belonged to the Martial Sky Continent. To the cultivators of the Martial Heaven Continent, these Starry Sky sects are nothing more than a bunch of bandits. They occupy the ancient Starry Sky paths that originally belonged to us. Not only do they rob us of our opportunities, but they also rob us of our treasures. They keep the good stuff and don't want the bad stuff. Only then will they be left for us. Zhu Xiaomei was indignant. Clearly, she had also been treated unfairly in the Starry Sky sections. Yi Fei sighed helplessly. The world of martial arts has always been one where the strong prey on the weak. In the end, we still have to rely on ourselves and the entire Martial Sky Continent to be strong enough to intimidate these wolves. Zhu Xiaomei looked forward to it. "I believe that we will become strong very soon. I heard from my elders that there has never been an era where so many peerless geniuses have appeared in our Martial Sky Continent. This is a sign that the great era of martial arts is coming." That's right, the treasures of the Blazing Sun sect are in front of us. Most of the treasures that were plundered from the ancient Starry Sky path are stored here. Zhu Xiaomei didn't bring Yi Fei to the luxurious palace. Instead, she brought him to an inconspicuous side hall. However, it was this side hall that made Yi Fei's spiritual sense a huge fluctuation of spiritual qi. There must be treasures in here. Boom! Yi Fei took out his black sword on the spot. Then, he skillfully smashed the door of the treasury, as well as the array and restrictions inside, into smithereens. That posture and that action gave Zhu Xiaomei the impression that Yi Fei was very good at plundering. Then, Zhu Xiaomei couldn't take her eyes off the large amount of treasures in the treasury. Yi Fei's eyebrows also twitched. Just from the range of his spiritual sense, he could sense hundreds of billions of spiritual stones, immortal crystals, and all kinds of heavenly treasures. There were even more that he couldn't count. And this was only one of the Blazing Sun sect's garrisons. From this, it could be seen how much wealth these Starry Sky sects had plundered on this ancient Starry Sky path. All the spiritual stones are mine. You can take the rest, Yi Fei said straightforwardly. With his strength, ordinary heavenly treasures wouldn't be of much use to him. However, these spiritual stones and immortal crystals were enough for Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle to eat to their heart's content for a long time. Indeed, it's a tough life to raise two foodies. Yi Fei was very depressed as he turned into a porter. Very quickly, all the spirit stones in the treasury had been plundered clean. However, Yi Fei was still very dissatisfied. He sized up this treasure and even activated his eye of thunder punishment. The black sword even pried open a few pieces of the floor and dug 3 feet into the ground. No, based on my many years of experience, since there are 3 heaven-grade quasi-emperors guarding this place all year round, then this Blazing Sun city must not be ordinary. There must be more than these ordinary treasures here. There must be more precious treasures hidden here. Seeing that he couldn't find anything after digging 3 feet into the ground, Yi Fei carried his black sword and began to knock on the surrounding walls again. He looked very professional. Why do I feel that Yi Fei is better at plundering than fighting? Zhu Xiaomei blinked and couldn't help but look at Yi Fei in a new light. Then, she saw that as the black sword smashed randomly, the walls of the treasure vault suddenly exploded with a powerful force of repulsion. Yi Fei's eyes suddenly became brighter than the stars. He immediately shouted, raised his black sword, and smashed it with all his might. Chapter 1564. Another small world of a martial emperor? Yi Fei and Zhu Xiaomei were a little surprised, but they soon understood. After all, this was the ancient path of stars. Countless martial emperors and martial gods from the ancient and remote antiquity eras had left all kinds of tests here. Since the Scorching Sun sect had occupied the bottom of the ancient path of stars, it was no surprise that they found a few small worlds here. There was nothing strange about it. No wonder the Scorching Sun sect chose this place. The reason he didn't place the treasury in that luxurious palace was most likely to hide this small world and not let others discover it. Fortunately, they met an experienced veteran like me. If it were anyone else, they would have been fooled. Yi Fei began to observe the small world with great interest. It was a small world. Zhu Xiaomei finally couldn't help but interrupt. Yi Fei, are you very experienced in plundering? How is that possible? I mean, I have a lot of life experience. Yi Fei's expression was solemn and righteous. Zhu Xiaomei nodded when she saw that there was nothing wrong with it. However, she still refused to give up and took the opportunity to ask, Yi Fei, have we met before? I feel that you are very close to me. Zhu Xiaomei's face was a little red as she spoke. After all, she felt a sense of familiarity from someone of the same age as her. Even Zhu Xiaomei herself felt that it was very strange and infuriating. Yi Fei even coughed dryly and thought to himself, not only have we met before, but you even hugged me when I turned into Grandmaster Zhu and acted like a spoiled child. If I hadn't been quick-witted and touched your head a few more times, I would have been exposed. Of course, Yi Fei only dared to think this in his heart. If he said it out loud, Zhu Xiaomei would definitely beat him to death on the spot. Yi Fei's expression was very serious as he reminded Zhu Xiaomei, we shouldn't stay here for long. Let's plunder the ill-gotten gains first. If you have anything to say it after we get out. In order to prevent Zhu Xiaomei from asking any more questions, Yi Fei took the lead and rushed into the small world. Zhu Xiaomei had no choice but to follow. The small world hidden by the Scorching Sun sect was very unique. There are layers upon layers of formations inside. It was like an ocean of formations. As soon as he rushed in, Yi Fei fell into an illusory array. Fortunately, this array was only effective on weak martial sages. As a powerful half-martial emperor, Yi Fei was not affected by this array at all. Zhu Xiaomei obviously knew the origin of this array ocean. The moment she entered, she covered her mouth in shock and exclaimed, "This isn't a small world to test us. It's the core of the ancient city's array formation. Whoever controls this array ocean will be able to control all the defenses of this ancient city." Yi Fei was also shocked. "Sis Zhu, are you sure you didn't get the wrong person?" "How could I be wrong? This is common knowledge. Your true martial sacred courtyard should have records. Didn't you learn it?" Zhu Xiaomei was a little confused. Yi Fei suddenly felt a little embarrassed. However, he quickly thought of something and became excited. There's so many formations. It would consume a lot of energy to activate them. Spiritual stones can't provide this energy. Only a large amount of spiritual veins can activate this array ocean. In other words, it's very likely that a large amount of spiritual veins are hidden here. I don't care about the spiritual veins. This array ocean is not something I can explore with my strength. Yi Fei, you have to be careful. After Zhu Xiaomei finished speaking, she suddenly turned and walked out. She was a person with a sense of propriety. She knew what to ask for and what not to ask for. Looking at Zhu Xiaomei's figure, Yi Fei secretly nodded. He had a higher opinion of Zhu Xiaomei. However, it would not be easy to find the hidden spiritual veins in such a large array ocean. However, this won't be a problem for Xiao Qiao. "Xiao Qiao, come out and do your work." Yi Fei shouted into the beast mark space. He thought that Xiao Qiao would run out happily. However, after waiting for a long time, Xiao Qiao did not respond. Yi Fei was slightly stunned. His consciousness entered the beast mark space, and his face immediately darkened. Inside the beast mark space, Xiao Qiao was dragging the dragon turtle's tail and walking around. It looked like Xiao Qiao was very angry and very busy. Yi Fei immediately smiled bitterly. He knew that he had to appease Xiao Qiao quickly. He immediately took out his trump card. A large amount of spiritual stones and immortal crystals were all thrown into the beast mark space. Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle were almost drowned by the spiritual stones. "Xiao Qiao, you and the dragon turtle can eat as many spiritual stones and immortal crystals as you want." Yi Fei was very generous. After all, he had plundered a lot of spiritual stones and immortal crystals from the Scorching Sun sect. As a super glutton, Xiao Qiao was completely unable to resist the temptation of casually eating spirit stones. The struggle on her face only lasted for a second. Xiao Qiao had already decided to forgive Yi Fei for the time being and finish eating these spirit stones first. Xiao Qiao casually threw the dragon turtle aside and ran out of the beast mark space excitedly. He ran in a direction, ignoring the large number of arrays around him. Yi Fei's eyes lit up. He understood that the route Xiao Qiao took was probably the only safe route in this array ocean. It could also lead to the location of the spiritual veins. He quickly followed behind Xiao Qiao and also rushed into the array ocean. However, Xiao Qiao and Yi Fei had forgotten how terrible it was to put a large number of spiritual stones and the dragon turtle together. Unfortunately, Yi Fei's attention was on the spiritual veins. Along the way, he saw a large number of damaged arrays. It seems like the Scorching Sun sect took control of this place and did a lot of damage to these arrays. Their goal must be the spiritual veins here. I hope they didn't take them all away at once. Yi Fei's expression turned ugly, especially when Xiao Qiao ran into the depths of the array ocean and saw that the huge killing arrays had all lost their effectiveness. The spiritual veins, which were the cores of the arrays, had all disappeared. Yi Fei even had the thought of annihilating the Scorching Sun sect. However, Yi Fei's expression turned better when he saw Xiao Qiao continuing to run deeper. If Xiao Qiao continued to run, it meant that there must be something with astonishing spiritual qi here that attracted Xiao Qiao's attention. Xiao Qiao was also very fast. She circled around countless arrays and suddenly rushed into one of them. At this time, Yifei was already on the verge of fainting from the tens of millions of arrays in the sea of arrays. He didn't have time to think, and had already followed Xiao Qiao and rushed into the array. Chapter 1565. Even a martial god realm expert could only create a small world. Creating a small world inside a small world had completely overturned the knowledge of the cultivators. What kind of person had the ability to create so many pocket dimensions? Yifei's heart was shaken. Of course, Xiao Qiao didn't have the same worries as Yifei. When she ran into this small world, Xiao Cao's eyes were already sparkling. She quickly ran in front of a big stone, hugged the stone, and rolled around. She even bit down on it. Yifei was also shocked. Xiao Qiao, don't bite. Damn, that was another piece of enlightenment stone. It was even bigger than the big green rock that Yifei had seen in the true martial divine hall. Xiao Qiao happily took a bite. Suddenly, her small face became extremely ugly. With a puff, she spat out the stone that she had bitten. She expressed that this stone was very bitter and disgusting to eat. Xiao Qiao didn't like it at all. She even forcefully threw the large stone on the ground. Smack! To Yifei's surprise, the big enlightenment stone suddenly cracked from the middle after Xiao Qiao threw it. The inside of the stone emitted a strong, spiritual light. He took a closer look and saw that the spiritual light was a shining bronze key. Yifei and Xiao Qiao were shocked. Wasn't this enlightenment stone? Why did a key pop out of it? Could it be that this thing attracted Xiao Qiao? He was curious. He immediately probed the enlightenment stone and the key with his divine consciousness. However, he found that the enlightenment stone had lost all its energy. No wonder little grass found it disgusting. Perhaps this stone used to be a precious enlightenment stone a long time ago. But in order to hide this key, this enlightenment stone seemed to have exhausted all of its power. Just what kind of key is this, and where is this place? Yifei picked up the key carefully. His face was full of confusion. At this moment, a mysterious female voice sounded from the depths of his heart. This is the Array Sect's Array World. What? As a member of the Guardians, have you all forgotten about the Array Sect? Array Faction? What is the Array Faction? Who are you? Xiao Qiao, did you hear something? Yifei jumped in fright and hurriedly went to check on Little Grass. However, he discovered that Little Grass had already angrily ran back into the Beastmark space to settle the score with the Dragon Turtle since it couldn't eat the Enlightenment Stone. During the time that Xiao Qiao was away, the Dragon Turtle had already swallowed 2/3 of the Spirit Stones inside into its stomach. Yifei was so depressed that he did not know what to say. However, he also found the source of the female voice. It was the key in his hand. Yifei thought and tried to transfer some vital energy into the key. The key in his hand suddenly emitted a dazzling spiritual light. It was as if some kind of seal had been unlocked. A beautiful female figure walked out of the key. She looked at Yifei strangely. Strange, you are not a disciple of the Array Faction. You are also not a guardian of the ancient road of the stars. How did you find this place? How did you know how to unlock my seal? Yifei was a little speechless. After discovering a treasure, one would use vital energy to check if there was another person's primordial spirit imprint. This was something that all cultivators would do subconsciously. However, he did not expect that there would be a woman hidden in the key. Of course, this was only the afterimage of the woman. In other words, she might have died a long time ago. In addition to the confidence that the woman revealed, Yifei could not help but sigh. He roughly understood what was going on. Clearly, this minor world belonged to the Array Faction. As for the Array Faction, they had a close relationship with the Guardians of the Ancient Road of the Stars. Yifei said, "Senior, I don't know about the Array Faction. The Guardians of the Ancient Road of the Stars have all been exterminated. Now, the ones occupying the Ancient Road of the Stars are those Starry Sky sections. This road no longer belongs to the Martial Heaven Continent's cultivators." How is that possible? Starry Sky sects? They are just a bunch of losers who failed to pass the Guardian's test. How could they have the power to occupy the ancient road of the stars, created by dozens of martial gods and thousands of martial emperors? The woman was unable to accept this fact. Yi Fei's heart shook violently. Hundreds of martial gods? That was definitely not the number of martial gods that existed in the ancient era. This woman's identity was obvious. Senior, may I ask about the origin of the Array faction? How are they related to the Guardians of the Stars? Asked Yi Fei curiously. He had always thought that Starry Sky sects were aliens. Now it seemed that wasn't the case. I don't like being called Senior. You can call me the Array Fairy. That's right. What era is it now? The Array Fairy looked at Yi Fei with some displeasure. She was obviously very displeased with the way he addressed her, even though she had already died in battle during the Antiquity Age. With the experience of dealing with Shang Jing, the Alliance Chief, Yi Fei tactfully changed his words. Elder Sister Fairy, you might not know this, but this is the end of the cultivation era. The glory of the ancient era and the ancient era is long gone. Not to mention martial gods. We cannot even break through to martial emperor. If you can break through to martial emperors and martial emperors, please tell me the secret. Let the martial heaven continent's cultivators return to the glory of the ancient era and take back this ancient road of the stars that belongs to us. Yi Fei was hot-blooded. He had the drive and boldness of a hot-blooded youth. Unfortunately, the Array Fairy had already seen through Yi Fei's intentions. However, Yi Fei calling her sister made the Array Fairy feel that Yi Fei was more pleasing to the eye. She smiled and said, "My original body was already destroyed in the ancient era. The current me is only a fragment of my divine clone. I do not have the memories of a martial monarch or a martial god. All I have are the memories of countless formations. With your talent, you are not suitable to inherit my formation sect. However, you still have a chance to become the new guardian." Yi Fei was disappointed, but he still asked, "What are the requirements to become a guardian? I was abandoned by the heavens. Could it be that I can also become a guardian?" At that moment, Yi Fei didn't know what a guardian was. He didn't even know what the Array faction was. However, Yi Fei knew that the ancient era was the strongest era of the martial heaven continent. Those who could survive from that era to this day were all extraordinary people. He didn't care about that. He had to hug her thigh first. "What? You were abandoned by the heavens? No wonder you could come here. You should know that in the ancient era, you were abandoned by the heavens. You were called." The Array Fairy seemed to have thought of something. She didn't say anything else. She just looked at Yi Fei with a strange light in her eyes. The Array Fairy's tone became serious. She stared at Yi Fei and asked, "Young man, what is your name?" Chapter 1566. Pass without any tribulations? Boom. The Array Fairy's words shook Yi Fei to the core. What did it mean to pass without any tribulations? That was to break through to the martial emperor realm without any tribulations. This was unbelievable. Martial arts cultivation was to defy the heavens. Defying the heavens would lead to the punishment of the heavens, which was the tribulations. The tribulations of the martial emperor realm were the first punishment of the heavens. Since ancient times, countless martial artists had died tragically under the tribulations, especially since he was the one who was abandoned by the heavens. The tribulation of the martial emperor realm was even more terrifying. Yet the Spirit Array Fairy said that she could help him break through to the martial emperor realm without having to undergo the tribulation. Hearing this news, even though Yi Fei's heart was as steady as a rock, it was still stirred up by huge waves. "Array Fairy, are you sure there's a way for me to pass without any tribulations and become a martial emperor?" Yi Fei suppressed the excitement in his heart. His expression was solemn. The Array Fairy said with certainty, "Of course, I'm sure of this. My father became a god through arrays. He created a divine array that can fight against the heavens. Naturally, it can help you break through to the martial emperor realm. However, I don't have this kind of heaven and earth divine array here. But you have to go through the Array factions test and get my brother's approval. Only then can you use the divine array. Earth array faction? Brother? Sister Fairy, can you explain in detail? Yi Fei rubbed his head. He was almost confused by the array fairy's words. I almost forgot. It's the age of chaos now. You've lost your ancient memories. Let's put it this way. After my father, my brother, and I became martial gods one after another, our ideas on arrays were divided. The array faction was split into three. I was in charge of the Earth array faction, which focused on killing martial gods arrays. My brother was in charge of the Earth array faction, which researched arrays to kill earthly venerables. My father was in charge of the most powerful Sky array faction, which researched arrays to kill heavenly venerables. The ancient road of the stars was also split into the upper, middle, and lower paths at that time. The so-called Starry Sky sects you mentioned are all failures who came to the ancient Starry Sky road to gain experience. This ancient road is far crueler than you can imagine. These people can't pass our formation test to become guardians, and they don't have the courage and strength to complete this road. Many people felt that they had no face to return to the martial heaven continent, so they gathered together. However, I didn't expect those losers to have the guts to occupy the ancient path and kill all the guardians. When the formation fairy mentioned the Starry Sky sect, her tone was filled with anger. Naturally, a murderous aura emerged from her body. This elder sister fairy was not a soft-hearted person. In the end, in order to become a martial god, which one of them did not step on the corpses of thousands of enemies, one step at a time, there had never been a martial god realm martial god through cultivation, only a martial god realm martial god through battle. This was especially true for the formation sect, which had 3 martial gods. It could be described as ridiculous. In any case, Yi Fei was a little frightened at this moment. Fortunately, the formation fairy's anger only lasted for a moment. She restrained her anger and looked at Yi Fei with a serious expression. She said, "Yi Fei, now that you've heard this, do you still have the courage to go to the Earth Formation sect and participate in the Guardian test?" To be honest, Yi Fei was a little frightened when he heard that the powerful Starry Sky sects were all descendants of those who had failed in the ancient trials. However, when he thought of the martial emperor tribulation, which was almost certain death for those who had been abandoned by the heavens, Yi Fei's heart quickly became firm. I don't believe that the formation sect's test will be more powerful than the martial path calamity I faced when I merged with the power of despair for the 6th time. A few days ago, when he had merged with the power of despair, even God's fury had appeared. In the end, it had still been killed by him. No matter how powerful the formation sect's test was, could it be more powerful than God's fury? At this moment, Yi Fei had no reason to hesitate. He would not give up on any opportunity to break through to the martial emperor realm. I am willing to participate in the formation sect's test. Very good, as expected of Yi Fei. Remember, the martial emperor tribulation will not be your obstacle. It will be the beginning of your glory. I really hope to see those bastards of the sorcerer tribe's expressions of shock and fear when they hear that someone who has been abandoned by the heavens has broken through to the martial emperor realm and even become a martial god. Unfortunately, I don't have much time left. The formation fairy's figure gradually became blurry. However, her expression was filled with excitement. At this moment, her spiritual sense seemed to have passed through this world and entered the boundless universe. Then it enveloped the entire Tianwu continent. Martial god? How could it be a martial god? Boom! In the boundless void, the human demon and Wang Bai's battle had been going on for a long time. Suddenly, the human demon sensed something. His white skeleton body emitted a terrifying white flame. That flame could melt the void and destroy the heavens and earth. Wang Bai, stop what you're doing! The human devil roared. The martial god is here, and I'm going to fight her. Maybe she's strong enough to kill me. He was like a bone dragon as he charged out of the void to fight the martial god. Following that, an incomparably majestic aura erupted from Wang Bai's body. This aura forcibly suppressed the enraged human demon. Wang Bai's demonic body roared as his 7 faces simultaneously emitted a majestic demonic voice. Human demon, do you admit that I am more handsome and stronger than you? The human demon did not say anything. He suddenly calmed down after the appearance of the martial god. The 12 martial emperor bone dragons roared again. They pulled the war chariot and the human demon towards Wang Bai. Sai, what a sin. I'm just too handsome. There are always people who are inexplicably jealous of me. Wang Bai sighed. At the same time, the 7 faces and 1,000 hands also attacked the human demon. They no longer cared about the aura of the martial god, as they were immersed in the endless battle. Meanwhile, in the middle of the starry ancient road, in an inconspicuous starry sky, tiny saber god Shui Yu was having a deadly battle with an exceptional genius from a starry sky sect. Their battle caused the starry sky to explode, turning it into a void. However, as they were about to execute their moves to kill their opponent, a terrifying godly glow suddenly burst out from under their feet. Not only did the godly glow knock them over 10,000 li away, but also sent them flying over 10,000 li away. In the following period of time, it formed an ancient gate that towered above the star. That's the Formation Gate, the entrance of the Earth Formation sect. That's impossible. We've already killed all the guardians of the starry ancient road. How could anyone still be able to open the entrance of the Earth Formation sect? No matter what, it's the best chance for us to wash away the disgrace of our ancestors. Even if we kill all the guardians, we won't be able to control the starry ancient road. Only by passing the trial of the ancient formation sect and obtaining the identity of the guardians will we be able to take over the starry ancient road. Chapter 1567. The people who were most surprised by the appearance of the Earth Array sect were the small knife god Shui Yu and the Blood River sect's spirit blood. One of them was the young master of the Knife God Valley, known as the most powerful genius of the generation. The other was the Blood River sect's eldest disciple, the Blood River sect's spirit blood. Due to the changes in the heavens, the Great Era was about to begin. The Tianwu continent wasn't the only one affected. Even the starry sky was affected, and powerful geniuses began to appear. For example, Xuelingzi was a peerless genius born in the starry sky. Originally, Xuelingzi and Shui Yu had been fighting for a treasured saber. However, as they fought, an incomparably large small world had appeared where they were fighting. It was obvious that only a martial god could possess it. Some small worlds. The two of them instinctively stopped fighting and treated the small world as their own. Shui Yu said coldly, Xuelingzi, this small world belongs to me. If you leave now, I won't kill you. Xuelingzi sneered, what a joke. The starry sky path is the territory of the Blood River sect. Any small world that appears here should belong to the Blood River sect. Shui Yu, if you leave now, I can spare your life. I heard that your cousin Shui Yun has already died. Don't you want to take revenge for dying at the bottom of the starry sky? Shui Yun was trash to begin with. Now that he's dead, he can only blame himself for being inferior. Don't think that I don't know your origins. You're just the descendants of a bunch of losers. This starry sky path doesn't belong to you. Once I become a martial emperor, I'll give it to you. Be clear about this. Shui Yu raised his treasured saber. His saber light was like a burning flame, illuminating the starry sky. Xuelingzi's body was filled with the aura of a boundless sea of blood. That aura was similar to the blood demon sect's cultivation technique, but Xuelingzi's cultivation technique was stronger and more terrifying. It was the most authentic demon god's cultivation technique. As the saying went, if you didn't agree with each other, you wouldn't say anything more. The two exceptional geniuses were already fighting over a treasure saber. Now that they had discovered a hidden space, it went without saying that they would fight even harder. However, both of them were peerless geniuses. They had already stood at the peak of the half-emperor realm. Naturally, the outcome of their battle wouldn't be determined in a short period of time. As Master Blood Spirit kept Shui Yu occupied, he quickly took out a spirit mirror and sent a message to the Blood River sect. He hoped that the Blood River sect would send a large group of experts to reinforce him and also drive Shuiyu away. Humph, you want to outnumber us? Dream on. Things that belong to our sky martial continent. We can't back down even an inch. Shuiyu sneered. The Blade God Valley was a martial emperor clan, and Shuiyu was a peerless genius. Over the years, he had made many friends. At this time, Shuiyu sent a message to his friends in the martial emperor clans and quasi-emperor worlds, asking them to come and help. Moreover, the first person he sent was goddess Lu Qing using the spiritual mirror. He sent a message. Shuiyu, you're courting death. Master Blood Spirit was enraged when he saw that Shuiyu had spread such important news. The blood qi on his body became even more terrifying, turning the surrounding starry sky into a sea of blood. Yi Fei didn't know that the Formation Fairy's martial god consciousness had not only alerted the human demon, but had also reopened the Earth Formation sect, which had been hidden in the middle of the starry sky. The Array Fairy's avatar had already vanished into thin air after she had done all this. All that was left was the key, which was shining with a shocking amount of spiritual qi. Yi Fei, this key is the inheritance of the Human Formation sect. Take it, and you can go to the Earth Formation sect to take the Guardian test. As for whether you can pass, it will depend on your strength. These were the last words that the Formation Fairy left behind. Yi Fei took these words to heart. After all, this was the key to whether he could successfully break through to the Martial Emperor level. He couldn't be careless. But this Formation Fairy is too stingy. She's already a martial god, but she didn't even leave me a spiritual vein. Yi Fei walked out of the small world gloomily. Then he left the Guardian's world. At this moment, Zhu Xiaomei was still outside, carrying the treasures outside. Zhu Xiaomei was very surprised to see Yi Fei come out so quickly. Yi Fei, what's in there? I felt a terrifying aura just now. Could it be the aura of a martial god? Zhu Xiaomei's voice was trembling. It is indeed the aura of a martial god. Yi Fei nodded. He understood Zhu Xiaomei's feelings. After all, that was a real martial god. When he felt the aura of a martial god from the Formation Fairy, he was actually a little shocked. After all, the martial god was still too far away from them. It was too terrifying. It's a pity that such a powerful Formation Fairy died in the ancient times. Yi Fei sighed again. He didn't hide the matter of the ancient Array sect from Zhu Xiaomei. Moreover, the Formation Fairy's aura of a martial god was so powerful. It was impossible to hide it. Heavens, she really was a martial god, and an ancient martial goddess. It's a pity that I didn't get to meet her, Zhu Xiaomei said unwillingly, stomping her feet. Yi Fei smiled and said, if you miss this martial god, there will be another one. In the Earth Array sect, there will definitely be more martial gods. If you want, you can also participate in the Guardian's test with me. Forget it. I'm not as perverted as you. Zhu Xiaomei glanced at Yi Fei. She was grateful, but also regretful. She took out several yellowed books and showed them to Yi Fei. Yi Fei, look. These are some of the ancient and primordial era's refinement manuals that the Scorching Sun sect obtained from the ancient path of stars. These are very important to our Zhu family. It doesn't matter if we die in the starry sky, but it would be too regretful if we lost this precious information again. Yi Fei nodded in understanding. In the end, the Zhu family was a refining family. Zhu Xiaomei clearly valued refining more than anything else. He faintly understood something. Zhu Xiaomei also sighed regretfully. I originally wanted to follow you and fight alongside you in the starry sky. But in order to preserve this precious, refining information, I have to return to my family. It's very likely that this will allow the entire Martial Heaven continent's refining level to rise by a qualitative leap. When it came to refining, Zhu Xiaomei's face was filled with pride and excitement. Knowing that Zhu Xiaomei had made up her mind to return to the Martial Heaven continent, Yi Fei suddenly had a thought. He felt that Zhu Xiaomei's return this time would be very beneficial to him. Zhu Xiaomei, wait for me. Yi Fei rushed back into the protector's space. At this time, he directly summoned the Undying Sword Soul. Then he controlled the Undying Sword Soul and used his true yuan to seal away 2/3 of the heavenly tribulation elixir that the undying sword's soul had refined. Yi Fei hadn't forgotten that the Grand Dean had exhausted his lifespan in order to save him. He had always remembered this kindness. However, he hadn't undergone his tribulation at that time, so he hadn't been able to absorb the energy of the heavenly tribulation to refine heavenly tribulation elixir. When he had absorbed the 6th despair energy, he had obtained a large amount of heavenly tribulation elixir. This was a treasure that could extend a quasi-emperor's lifespan. Yi Fei didn't have the time to personally bring it back to the Grand Dean, but he could ask Zhu Xiaomei to bring it back. This way, the Grand Dean will be able to extend his lifespan and protect the true martial sacred academy. I'll also be able to repay the Grand Dean's kindness in saving me. Now it's time to head to the middle path of the starry sky. I'll find the Earth Formation sect and pass the Protector's trial. Chapter 1568. The ancient starry sky road was far larger than Yi Fei had imagined. This was no longer a small city built from meteorites. It had directly occupied a vital planet and built an ancient city on top of it. This made the ancient city's surface area very large. It was almost equivalent to a huge empire. Ever since the Blood River sect had killed all the protectors of the Central Starry Sky Path, they had moved their entire sect to this ancient city. They viewed the Central Starry Sky Path as their absolute territory. No one was allowed to encroach on it. Of course, they controlled such a large area of the starry sky, as well as its resources and minor worlds. The Central Starry Sky Path was rich, and the Blood River sect's power was incomparably great. Not only had they given birth to a peerless genius like the Blood Spirit Child, but they also had a large number of peak geniuses. Along the way, Yi Fei heard some information about the Blood River sect. He sneered inside. What good way to turn the tables. Unfortunately, the Martial Heaven continent's overall strength is too low. Otherwise, how could we let these starry sky sects bully us? Yi Fei didn't stay in the ancient city for long. The Formation Fairy had said that the Earth Formation sect's gates wouldn't be open forever. They would only be open for a short period of time. If he couldn't enter in time, he would forever miss the chance to become a protector. Yi Fei didn't want to waste any time on the Central Starry Sky Path. He directly took out the key the Formation Fairy had given him and spread it out in his hand. The hidden runes on the key quickly sensed the location of the Earth Formation sect. It began to point him in the direction of the Earth Formation sect. Yi Fei immediately used the Great Void Step and rushed in the direction of the key as fast as he could. However, this ancient star city was just too big. It was almost the size of an empire in the central region. Even with the power of the void technique, it took Yi Fei more than 10 days to get close to this ancient star city. The outer walls of the ancient city. Along the way, he saw countless cultivators gathering around this section of the city wall. By the time he got there, this section of the city wall was already packed with people. Boom! He heard the sound of an intense battle ahead, followed by a loud, arrogant voice, purposely allowing the people in the surroundings to hear it clearly. You piece of trash! Do you really think you can leave the ancient city and join the fun at the Martial God Small World? Piss off! Bloodsword Spirit, you're going too far. This starry sky path was originally left by the martial emperors of the Martial God continent. Why can't we go in? We want to go in. You have no right to stop us. In the crowd, Yi Fei heard a familiar voice. It was Dongfang Yu's voice. He was a little surprised, but he was very happy. It's always good to meet an old friend. Of the heavens disciple, of the marshal of the divine, of the sacred academy. This wasn't a simple defeat. It was purely to humiliate the heavens disciple. The moment the heavens disciple fell down, he vomited blood and fainted. No wonder Dongfang Yu and the others were so agitated and angry. The Blood River sect has gone too far this time, Yi Fei said in a low voice. That's right. These starry sky sects are all jackals and wolves. They have occupied the starry sky ancient road that originally belonged to us. We have tolerated it. They even want to plunder our treasures. We have tolerated it. But this time, we can't tolerate it anymore. Behind Yi Fei, a few more martial artists of the Tianwu continent came. They were all very young and wore luxurious dragon robes. They were all princes of first-tier empires of the central continent. Under the pressure of the Black Hell, Holy Sun's crazy assassination, they also came to the Starry Sky Path to gain experience. At this time, Shuiyu had already spread the news of the martial god's world, including the location. This attracted a large number of martial artists of the Tianwu continent. They wanted to rush out and gain experience in that minor world. But they didn't know that the martial god's world was the Earth Formation Sect's mountain. It was the place where the protectors were tested. The Blood River sect was also afraid that a large number of martial artists of the Tianwu continent would rush in and take the limited number of protectors. So they had set up a barrier to prevent martial artists of the Tianwu continent from entering. However, the Blood River sect was also worried that such a move would cause public anger. It wouldn't be beneficial for them in the future. That was why they had arranged for Bloodsword and the others to set up a martial stage here. Bloodsword snorted coldly. Whatever you say. In any case, you can leave if you want. My Blood River sect has always relied on strength to speak. Whoever can defeat me can leave and explore the martial god's world. If you can't even defeat me, then trash like you don't have the qualifications to enter the martial god's world. Boom. Hearing Bloodsword's humiliating words, many martial artists of the Tianwu continent, including Yi Fei, were infuriated. But most of them didn't dare say anything. Bloodsword was just too strong. Even a heaven-class disciple of the Sacred Institute would be sent flying with a single kick. Some would even faint. That made it so that those weaker cultivators didn't dare to rashly go forward. Of course, there were also people who weren't afraid of death. Even after hearing Bloodsword's words, they still went forward without hesitation. That person looked like someone from a cosmic sect. Being in the starry sky, he had been baptized by starlight for many years. His aura was unusually strong. Bloodsword, do I have to defeat you to explore the martial god's world? Can't you be flexible? I was wondering who it was. So it's the little divine leg of the divine leg sect. All right, I'll give face to the sect master of the divine leg sect and let you go. Bloodsword was very straightforward. He had received the order to stop the martial artists of the Tianwu continent. As for the cosmic sect martial artists, he would turn a blind eye to them. Among the crowd, there were many cosmic sect martial artists who had heard the news and came to join the fun. At this moment, their eyes lit up and they all went forward to befriend Bloodsword. Senior Brother Bloodsword, please let us go as well. Our cosmic sect martial artists are of the same branch. Yeah, the martial god's world might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Even if we die, we want to go in and take a look before we die. Senior Brother, please give us some face. Bloodsword was very straightforward. In any case, letting one person go was the same as letting a group go. He simply smiled and said, well said, well said. My Blood River sect isn't unreasonable. Anyone from the cosmic sect can enter and exit freely. My Blood River sect won't stop them. The warriors who belonged to the Starry Sky sects were suddenly overjoyed. Just a moment ago, they were filled with righteous indignation. But now, the unhappiness in their hearts had long disappeared. Soon, they rushed out in groups. In particular, there were many ordinary martial sages in the 3rd or 5th layer. Their hair was already white, but they were still able to advance. Chapter 1569. Dong Fangyu was so angry that his hair stood on end. He strode out of the crowd and shouted, Bloodsword Master, the Blood River sect has gone too far by doing this. Bloodsword sneered and shook his head. It's not going too far, it's the truth. The martial heaven continent has already declined. It's the era of the starry sky sections. You're nothing but lowly commoners draped in the glory of your ancestors. If we're lowly commoners, then what about your ancestors who didn't even have the courage to walk the starry sky path to the end? Suddenly, a discordant voice rang out from the crowd. This voice caused the Blood River sect's disciples' expressions to change. Blood Sword roared furiously. "Who said that just now? If you have the guts, come out and see how I'll kill you." "I said it." "So what?" said Dongfang Yu coldly. "I said it. Your grandfather also said it." Those who had come to the Starry Sky Path to train, apart from a few seniors, were the most outstanding youths of the Martial Heaven continent. Because they were young, they were hot-blooded. Because they were young, they were outstanding. Because they were young, they were hot-blooded. Because they were young, they were hot-blooded. The Blood River sect's actions had completely infuriated them. Blood Sword's words were an insult to the entire Martial Heaven continent. No one retreated, and no one pursued the matter. Just who was the one who had said those words just now? They all agreed. This caused the Blood River sect's disciples to be shocked. A kind of fear appeared in their hearts, but Blood Sword's words quickly cheered them up. "A bunch of trash. It seems that if I don't kill a few of you, you won't know the difference between a lowly commoner and a Starry Sky sect." Dongfang Yu die. Blood Sword's eyes were bloodshot. He had made Dongfang Yu the best target to warn the others. Blood Qi condensed from his body, forming a terrifying blood sword. He wanted to kill Dongfang Yu on the spot. This undoubtedly infuriated Dongfang Yu. He also roared, and countless mysterious runes flashed on his body. These runes quickly condensed into a special runic divine fist that shot towards Blood Sword. The two of them instantly clashed. It was difficult to tell who had the upper hand. The heavenly sons of the Sacred Institute who had come with Dongfang Yu looked at each other in shock. That seems to be the most difficult Heavenly Book Divine Fist in the Heavenly Book Sacred Academy. I didn't expect Dongfang Yu to reach the great accomplishment in just a dozen years. It seems that Dongfang Yu has made great progress. Yi Fei was a little surprised, but when he thought of Dongfang Yu's title of Northern Boxing Emperor, he felt relieved. Rumble. Above the city wall, Dongfang Yu's divine fist was shocking. His fist energy whistled through the air, creating layers of ripples in the surrounding space. Bloodsword Sun was also very strong. The sea of blood around him exploded as he used the Blood River sect's Martial Emperor's secret technique. The blood swords tore the sky apart and continuously collided with Dongfang Yu's godly fists. This continued for more than 50 times. Suddenly, Blood Sword Master let out a groan, and all the blood swords in the sky disappeared. He himself was also smashed to the point of spitting out blood. He was half kneeling on the stage. He looked at Dongfang Yu with astonishment and intense jealousy. "I didn't expect your fist principle to have reached the acme of perfection. You can even use 10% of the power of a Martial Emperor's unique skill." Yi Fei was also shocked. Don't underestimate this 10% power. One had to reach the Martial Emperor realm to use 99% of the Martial Emperor's unique skill. If one wasn't a Martial Emperor, one could only use part of the skill's power. As for a half-Emperor realm warrior, it would be good if he could use a little bit of the skill. To be able to use 10% of the skill's power at the half-Emperor realm, one had to be a top genius. If Dongfang Yu could do it, it meant that he had undoubtedly transformed from a special genius to a top genius. It seems that Dongfang Yu must have had a fortuitous encounter on the ancient Star Road. Yi Fei secretly envied him and was happy for his friend's strength. Facing the powerful Dongfang Yu, the Bloodsword Master's face turned red. He suddenly roared and took out an astonishing blood sword that was shining with bloodlight. "You lowly land people, don't think that you could defeat us just because you have strong martial arts. I'll let you have a taste of the power of a semi-divine weapon." Boom! The Bloodsword Master waved the blood sword. The astonishing sword light formed a terrifying sword chi dragon that tore through the void and slashed toward Dongfang Yu. Chi! The sword chi dragon slashed forward and shattered Dongfang Yu's Fist King realm in an instant. Despicable! Without a semi-divine weapon, I can kill you like a dog. Dongfang Yu roared in anger. He had no chance of winning against a semi-divine weapon, so he could only retreat awkwardly. The Bloodsword Master sneered complacently. "So what if I'm despicable? In the martial world, strength is everything. As long as I have strength, who dares to disrespect me?" Humph! The blood sword master snorted and had no intention of stopping. Since the moment he was defeated by Dongfang Yu, he had decided to kill Dongfang Yu. Oh no, is our holy son going to die in the starry sky? The two holy sons of the Saint Academy, who followed Dongfang Yu, suddenly turned pale. They wanted to help, but they knew that they would be courting death in the face of a semi-divine weapon. A semi-divine weapon blood sword? This sword is not bad. It just so happens that I lack a good sword. Yi Fei's eyes lit up when he saw the blood sword. With the rapid improvement of his strength, the spirit-devouring sword, an imperial weapon, was obviously outdated. Although the black sword was magical, it was only a sword embryo. To use it to perform martial arts, one had to pay a high price. Therefore, what Yi Fei needed most now was a semi-divine weapon. As soon as the blood sword master took out the blood sword, Yi Fei took a fancy to it. In an instant, Yi Fei disappeared from where he was. He stepped into the void and suddenly appeared in front of Dongfang Yu, facing the terrible sword of the blood sword master. Who was he? Dongfang Yu was shocked. Humph! The blood sword master snorted inwardly. Although Yi Fei's appearance was strange, he had no intention of stopping. The semi-divine weapon blood sword emitted a dazzling bloody light, which completely covered the person in front of him. Yi Fei! Dongfang Yu's eyes turned red. He did not expect that the person who blocked the sword for him was Yi Fei. Chapter 1570. Yi Fei's actions also scared the angry warriors. When Bloodsword Master took out his semi-god tool and decided to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, many people were so scared that they couldn't move. After all, a semi-god tool was equivalent to an Earth-level domain. If one wasn't a peerless genius, no one would have the confidence to block it. What kind of attack was that? The disciples of the Blood River sect turned pale when they saw someone grab the semi-divine weapon with his bare hands. The Bloodsword Master's face turned red as he shouted, "Who are you? Do you know the consequences of offending the Blood River sect?" Yi Fei grabbed the blood sword and shook his head speechlessly. Why do all the people of the Starry Sky sects say the same thing? Wang Chun once said the same thing to me. Now he is dead. What? Wang Chun is dead? The Bloodsword Master's heart skipped a beat. His face was full of disbelief. As a member of the same Starry Sky sect, he certainly knew Wang Chun. Strictly speaking, Wang Chun's talent was greater than the Bloodsword Master's. However, such a peerless genius had died in the hands of this black-robed youth. The Bloodsword Master's subconscious reaction was disbelief. I don't believe it. Who doesn't know how to bluff? Let go. The Bloodsword Master's body suddenly emitted a terrifying aura. The aura caused the starry sky to tremble slightly. The blood sword that Yi Fei was holding tightly suddenly emitted a shocking force, trying to shake off Yi Fei's hand. He wanted to kill Yi Fei on the spot. Seeing this, Yi Fei looked indifferent. Before the Bloodsword Master could fully activate the blood sword, Yi Fei's body emitted a dazzling golden light, causing Yi Fei's strength to reach a certain level. From now on, this sword belongs to me. As for you, get out of my way. Bang! Yi Fei was like a terrifying war demon in golden armor. His power instantly suppressed the Blood Sword Master's. Not only did he forcefully snatch the Blood Sword Master's sword, but he also kicked the Blood Sword Master. Blood Sword screamed miserably. He was like a rubber ball being kicked by Yi Fei. He was in an extremely sorry state, but he was also incomparably furious. How dare you steal my sword? Give me back my sword. Blood Sword Master spurted out a few mouthfuls of blood. He had begged the elder for a long time to get that blood sword. This was the first time he showed it off, but it was snatched away by someone else. This made blood swordsmen even more aggrieved and furious than being slapped in public. Later on, when he stabilized his body, a shocking killing intent and fury burst out from his body. Bloodstains 10,000 miles. All of you attack. Kill him. Blood Sword Master roared. His body was covered in bloodlight, forming a huge blood sword light that pierced through the void and slashed towards Yi Fei. Seeing this, the other disciples of the Blood River sect did not hesitate. They all pulled out their swords at the same time. Streaks of blood swords slashed through the void, forming a vast sea of blood that rolled towards Yi Fei. At the same time, the blood sword that Yi Fei had snatched away suddenly trembled violently. The blood sword master was trying to use the true origin imprint in the sword to counterattack Yi Fei. In response, Yi Fei only made a move, and the blood sword became completely obedient. A destructive sword chi appeared on his body. The undying sword soul was instantly awakened in his body. The instant it sensed the presence of the sword spirit, the struggling blood sword suddenly stabilized. Not only did the sword spirit of the blood sword not dare to continue resisting, the true Yuan imprint within the blood sword, the undying sword spirit, was instantly wiped away, and the blood sword returned to its original form. The undying sword master became an ownerless sword. After that, Yi Fei raised the blood sword. Resplendent sword light illuminated the surroundings. Blood chi whistled through the air like a divine dragon, a sword tiger, a fire phoenix, and a black tortoise. Yi Fei did not hold back at all. From the moment the blood sword master had insulted the martial heaven continent, Yi Fei's fury had been ignited. The Tai Chi 4 phases sword slashed out. 4 terrifying divine sword lights appeared in the sky. They were the Azure Dragon Divine Sword, White Tiger Divine Sword, Vermilion Bird Divine Sword, and Black Tortoise Divine Sword. The 4 divine swords swept through the sky, shattering the starry sky. At the same time, they continuously pierced through the domains and bodies of the Blood River sect's disciples. Bang! 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 The sky was filled with Blood River sect disciples who had been pierced by the swords. Behind them, Blood Sword Master let out a miserable shriek. His king-level domain had also been pierced by the swords. However, due to the fact that Blood Sword Master was also a top-notch genius, he immediately ignited his own bloodline and escaped into the distance, even though he was severely injured. You're finished. I don't care who you are. Since you dared to offend the Blood River sect, you must die today. All of you must die. As the Blood Sword Master escaped, he did not forget to take out his spiritual mirror and ask for help from the Heaven Boundary Emperor of the sect. In his opinion, no matter how strong Yi Fei was, he would not be a match for a Heaven Boundary Emperor. Unfortunately, the Blood Sword Master had forgotten that Yi Fei did not only have a strong physical body. His Great Void technique was also unparalleled in speed. Without giving the Blood Sword Master a chance to take out his spiritual mirror, Yi Fei had already stepped into the void. When he reappeared, he was already behind the Blood Sword Master. Resplendent sword light illuminated the area. It was just one sword. Yi Fei had already pierced through the Blood Sword Master's body. The spiritual mirror was shattered into pieces. Poof! The sky was filled with blood. The Blood Sword Master stiffly fell from the sky without making a sound. Boom! Many martial artists who saw this scene were scared silly. Many of them were top geniuses from Martial Emperor and Quasi-Emperor clans. Although they were furious with the Blood River sect's actions, none of them had the guts to snatch the Blood Sword Master's semi-divine weapon in front of everyone like Yi Fei did. He did not even blink when he killed the Blood Sword Master and the other disciples of the Blood River sect in front of everyone. Good, good, good. Suddenly, Dong Fanyu was the first to cheer loudly. Many hot-blooded martial artists reacted. A flame began to burn in their hearts. That's right. Good. This is the courage that a man should have. A man should not be bullied. He killed in anger. The martial artists of the Tianwu continent have been bullied by these starry sky sects for too long. It's time to let them know our courage. Demon Yi, good job. Some of the heavenly disciples of the 3 sacred academies recognized Yi Fei and cheered for Yi Fei. The Blood River sect's actions were too unpopular. Not only did they occupy the starry sky path that originally belonged to the Tianwu continent, but they also planned to exclude all the martial artists of the Tianwu continent after discovering the martial god world. They wanted to monopolize the martial god world. This had undoubtedly angered everyone. Not only were they angry, but Yi Fei was also infuriated. That was why he had killed the Blood Sword Master and the others. As long as the Blood Sword Master and the others were not obstructing them, everyone could enter the starry sky and go to the martial god world of the Earth Formation sect to seek their own opportunities. If you're a man, follow me. Chapter 1571. Without communicating with Dongfang Yu, Yi Fei put away the blood sword with satisfaction and strode out of the city wall into the starry sky. The Heavenly Tao, Sacred Academy's Heavenly Emperor, said with dissatisfaction, "No matter how strong he is now, he won't be able to pass the martial emperor tribulation. In the end, it will all be for nothing." Was he being arrogant for? Yi Fei is not being arrogant. He's being too ruthless this time. He doesn't want to implicate us. If you're afraid, you can stay. If you're not afraid of death, you can follow Yi Fei. Even if we can't take back the ancient starry sky path, we must at least take back the martial gods world that our ancestors left for us. Yes, take back the martial gods world. There are no cowards among the martial artists of the Tianwu continent. Sai, he is still too young and impulsive. If we could resist, we would still be waiting here and not provoke these starry sky sections. We would still be able to survive. This demon, Yi Fei, wants to destroy the Tianwu continent. He wants to destroy these young people. Not everyone had the courage to step out of the starry sky. There were still many martial artists who chose not to take a step forward. In the end, Yi Fei was too ruthless this time. Not only did he kill the ordinary disciples of the Blood River sect, he even killed a top genius like the Blood Sword Master. This was completely offending the starry sky sections. At this moment, these people were afraid that Yi Fei's killing would implicate them. How would they dare to step out now? In the starry sky, there were even people who immediately turned around and ran to the Blood River sect's mountain gate, trying to report to the Blood River sect and gain their forgiveness. Of course, most of these people who stayed were the older generation of martial artists. They had struggled in the starry sky for decades, even centuries. They had lost their original hot-bloodedness and sharpness. They had become obedient people under the control of the starry sky sections. In the end, they were the same as the ancestors of the starry sky sections. They were the losers of the ancient starry sky path. Success would always belong to those who had the courage to step out. Brother Yi Fei, you're too mean. Back then, when you were being hunted down by quasi-emperors, I even pleaded for mercy on your behalf. In the end, you didn't even greet me when you saw me. Dongfang Yu walked over and complained to Yi Fei. Yi Fei didn't know what to say about this. There will definitely be people in that group who will secretly report back to the Blood River sect. It would be rude of me to inform you. That's true. However, you're a little too ruthless this time. Now that we've offended these starry sky sects, we'll have a hard time moving forward on this ancient road. Dongfang Yu sighed. If it weren't for this, he would have taken the lead and rushed out. Yi Fei also shook his head with a wry smile. Never be afraid of offending others, because what makes it difficult for us is not others, but ourselves. The key is that we have to have enough strength. Yes, strength. I wonder if this trip to the martial god world will increase our strength. Dongfang Yu's eyes flashed with strong anticipation. It definitely will. Yi Fei's expression was very firm. If the Formation Fairy hadn't lied to him, the Earth Formation sect would have the heaven and earth formation that would allow him to smoothly pass the martial emperor tribulation. Once he obtained this divine formation, even if he was abandoned by the heavens, he would still be able to smoothly pass the martial emperor tribulation and become a true martial emperor. In order to smoothly break through to the martial emperor realm, there was only one word that could stop him. Kill. All right, I met Zhao Yu. Dongfang Yu was silent for a while, then transmitted his voice to Yi Fei. Yi Fei's expression changed. He already knew that Zhao Yu had also walked on the ancient road of starry sky. After all, the saints and emperors of the four great sacred academies had a tradition of teaming up to explore the ancient road of starry sky. However, as the true martial sacred academy declined, this tradition changed from the four great sacred academies to the three great sacred academies. Thinking of this, Yi Fei suddenly had a trace of doubt. Strange, I remember that the three great sacred academies acted together on the ancient road of starry sky. Why is there only one holy sun here? Where are Zhao Yu and the Holy Son of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy? Dongfang Yu smiled bitterly and said, "This is what I want to tell you. The Holy Son of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy wanted to harm Zhao Yu, but in the end, he got himself killed. However, it's his fault for being too greedy." Dongfang Yu immediately told Yi Fei what had happened along the way. Only then did he know that all this was caused by Zhao Yu's identity as a martial artist with Emperor strength. As a martial artist with Emperor strength, Zhao Yu not only had the aura of an empress, but also had amazing luck. She could casually go out and encounter a fortuitous encounter. This kind of thing, which was a daydream for ordinary warriors, often happened to a martial artist with Emperor strength. For example, this time, Zhao Yu had only been on the ancient road of starry sky for a few days, but she had found several small worlds of martial emperors. Although these small worlds had been explored by others, Zhao Yu's amazing luck still made Dongfang Yu and the others envious. What was more exaggerated was that when Zhao Yu had just entered the ancient road of starry sky, she had found a small world left by a martial emperor. Although there were no treasures in that small world, the whole small world had been refined. In other words, Zhao Yu had picked up a small world without any tests. Even Dongfang Yu couldn't help but feel a little jealous of such amazing luck. Not to mention the others. The new Holy Son of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy was also greedy. He had deliberately startled a group of strong wild beasts to plot against Zhao Yu and seize the opportunity to seize the small world. However, the result was tragic. Zhao Yu had directly detonated the small world, creating a gap and smoothly escaping. However, the Holy Son of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy was first seriously injured by the explosion of the small world, then ravaged by wild beasts and died miserably. Since then, we have been separated from Zhao Yu. However, heaven and earth can testify that it was the Holy Son of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy who harmed Zhao Yu. It has nothing to do with me. Brother Yi, when you see Holy Daughter Zhao Yu, you must help me explain and put in a few good words. Dongfang Yu was trembling with fear. It should be known that that was a martial emperor's small world. It was not just priceless, it was worth a country. However, Zhao Yu had detonated it without batting an eye. Although Dongfang Yu had not participated in this matter, he could not help but have a strong fear of Zhao Yu. As a matter of fact, after knowing that Yi Fei and Zhao Yu had a special relationship, Dongfang Yu immediately came to plead for Zhao Yu. Yi Fei was also very depressed about this. He secretly thought, "Aren't you afraid that I will help you?" Although Zhao Yu looked like a femme fatale, in essence, this woman was very violent and ferocious. However, after hearing Dongfang Yu's words, Yi Fei heaved a long sigh of relief and said, "It's good that you are fine. However, Dongfang Yu, why do I feel that you seem to be afraid of Zhao Yu? Don't talk nonsense. I, Dongfang Yu, am not afraid of a woman." Dongfang Yu was a little embarrassed. However, thinking of Zhao Yu's madness of detonating the small world, he added in a low voice, just a little. Look at you." Yi Fei could not help scolding him with a smile. Chapter 1572. Yi Fei was still a step too late. At this moment, the entrance to the Earth Formation Sect's pocket dimension was already under the control of the Blood River Sect's martial artists. However, these martial artists did not enter. Instead, they looked coldly at the large group of martial artists from the Tianwu continent. These quasi-emperors' faces immediately turned ugly. Due to the preciousness of the spiritual mirror and the fact that this place was too far away from the Blood River City, they did not know that Yi Fei had killed the Blood Sword Master and forced his way here. However, seeing so many martial artists from the Tianwu continent coming over, they were still very unhappy. They were very unhappy. That bastard Blood Sword Master. The elder even gave him a half-step divine item, but he still failed to intimidate this group of lowly people. He actually allowed so many of them to come here. The elder said that we can't stop the peerless geniuses from entering the Earth Formation Sect. We will turn a blind eye to the disciples of other sects in the universe. The rest of them are not allowed to enter the Earth Formation Sect. But there are so many people here. If we stop all of them, we will incur the wrath of the crowd. Forget it. If we refuse all of them, it won't be beneficial to the Blood River sect's control of the path in the universe. After all, we still need these people to help us kill desolate beasts and obtain beast cores. Since that's the case, we can only force them to back off. The last Quasi-Emperor's eyes flashed coldly. Then, he walked over and stopped Yifei's group. Stop right there. Are you here to enter the pocket dimension? Whoosh! Everyone's gaze instinctively turned to Yifei and Dongfangyu. After all, the two of them were the strongest here. Especially Yifei. His actions of killing the Bloodsword Master and the others had made him the leader of all the martial artists present. They all wanted to see if Yifei would still be as strong as before in the face of these quasi-emperors from the Blood River sect. Yifei, this is a bit tricky. I heard that in the Blood River sect, only Earth-grade quasi-emperors are qualified to wear the blood robe. These people are all experts of the Blood River sect. Dongfangyu's expression was grave. In the end, although there were many martial artists around them, they were all scattered like sand. The Blood River sect, on the other hand, had 4 Earth Realm martial artists guarding the entrance to the pocket dimension. Their goal was clear. They wanted to bring people from the martial heaven continent into the martial gods world. Yifei also understood more about this. He knew that this wasn't an ordinary martial gods world, but the Earth Array sect. Now that the Blood River sect had sent so many of their experts here, there was an 80 to 90% chance that they were here for the Guardian test. The test hasn't started yet, but they're already thinking about eliminating their competitors. These Starry Sky sects really regard this ancient road as their home. Yifei shook his head, trying hard to suppress his unhappiness. Then he winked at Dongfangyu. Then, under the gazes of the crowd, Yifei strode out of the crowd and headed straight for the Earth Formation sect. His actions startled everyone. The 4 Earth Realm quasi-emperors of the Blood River sect immediately looked at Yifei coldly. The middle-aged man leading the group said coldly, "Stop right there. Who are you? What is your name? Which martial emperor's world do you come from? Do you know the rules for entering this pocket dimension?" "My name is Yifei. I am a loose cultivator. I don't know the rules. Can I trouble you to move aside and not block my way?" Yifei's voice was very calm. The 4 Earth Realm quasi-emperors were infuriated when they heard that. However, they didn't immediately attack Yifei. First, there were too many people here. If they rejected him too thoroughly, they were afraid of angering the crowd. That would also be detrimental to the Blood River sect's control over the ancient road. Second, Yifei was too calm, too strong. This made them secretly suspect that Yifei had some powerful backer. It was the middle-aged quasi-emperor who spoke. He suppressed his anger and stopped Yifei, saying, "Stop right there. You can't go in yet. If you want to go in, you have to follow our Blood River sect's rules. You have to hand over 50% of anything you obtain in the pocket dimension." Hand over 50%? What kind of rules are these? This martial god's pocket dimension doesn't belong to you. You want to take 50% of our gains without doing anything? Dongfangyu said angrily, unable to hold back his anger. Although the others didn't say anything, they were also filled with anger. The Blood River sect's rules were no different from daylight robbery. "Humph, I know you're unconvinced. However, our starry heavens are so realistic and cruel." "That's right. This martial god's world doesn't belong to us. However, this ancient starry heavens path does belong to our Blood River sect. As long as we control this ancient path for one day, we will be able to control it. If you find anything in it, you can have anything you want. We have the right to share the benefits of any treasures or minor worlds you have." An Earth Realm quasi-emperor said coldly. Then, another Earth Realm quasi-emperor immediately mocked him. "These are the rules of our Blood River sect. Either you comply or scram. A bunch of lowly commoners like you don't have that ability. Then scram to the side and talk to us when Mao Zhangxi is back." No one retorted. Although the words of these 2 Earth Realm quasi-emperors were unpleasant to hear, it was a bloody reality. It was very difficult for them to contend against the Starry Heavens sects, and even more so against the Blood River sect. Why don't we agree? 50% isn't unacceptable. Faced with the pressure of 4 Earth Realm quasi-emperors, some people's hearts couldn't help but waver. After all, there were 4 Earth Realm quasi-emperors standing in front of them. This kind of power wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could contend against. Although those who had the courage to step into the starry heavens were the elites of the elites, many people couldn't help but feel a little afraid when faced with the pressure of 4 Earth Realm quasi-emperors. Yifei also clearly sensed the willingness of these people to compromise. He sighed and said somewhat sadly, "I finally know why the starry heavens sects bully us. It's not that we aren't strong enough, but that you are too weak. Dongfang Yu, if I want to take your life for no reason, you will take it. What will you do with the treasure that you fought for?" Dongfang Yu was somewhat hesitant, but he still said firmly, "I will kill you directly." "Why?" Yifei seemed somewhat puzzled. "You're going too far," Dongfang Yu said through clenched teeth. Boom! Yifei and Dongfang Yu's words were like a clap of thunder, shocking the hearts of these youths. When faced with quasi-emperors, many people wholeheartedly wanted to compromise. However, they had never thought about the great humiliation behind the compromise. Chapter 1573. You are going too far. What dogs hit Blood River Sect? This ancient starry heavens path belongs to us. You bunch of bandits should be the ones to scram. 50%. You must be dreaming. Tui. Thinking about it carefully, behind this 50% profit, there was a deep contempt and humiliation. Even if a cultivator was shaken, at this time, their hearts would be replaced by a great anger. In the end, none of the youths that followed them here were weak. They were all the strongest geniuses of their respective clans in their respective regions. Now, someone actually dared to humiliate them and trample on them. Anyone with a bit of guts would not be able to tolerate this. This scene immediately caused the 4 confident Earth-ranked quasi-emperors to reveal shocked expressions. They had never seen such a scene before. Hundreds of immature youths actually dared to shout and shout at quasi-emperors like them, even daring to look down on them in such a manner. The might of the Blood River Sect. You are all seeking death. Boom, 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 boom. The rage of the 4 quasi-emperors completely erupted at this moment. Rage filled their faces. At this moment, they wished that they could choke Yifei to death on the spot. Originally, given their strength, even if 1,000 half-martial monarchs came to cause trouble, they would be able to suppress them instantly with their quasi-emperor's strength. However, Yifei's casual words infuriated them. Unexpectedly, their quasi-emperor's might could not suppress this group of enraged youths. Instantly, a huge wave of anger appeared on their bodies. At the same time, 4 streams of terrifying pressure came crashing down on Yifei without mercy. "Brat, why are you still not kneeling? Tell us your origins and your purpose in going against my Blood River Sect." Boom! Although the rage of the 4 Earth-ranked quasi-emperors was not as great as that of the Heaven-ranked quasi-emperors, their pressure was still like 4 mountains. Before the quasi-emperors even got close, the pressure made it hard for many people to breathe. However, Yifei did not move when faced with the pressure of these quasi-emperors. He stood as straight as a sword. Not only did he not kneel under the pressure of the 4 quasi-emperors' auras, but he also did not kneel. Instead, before their incredulous gazes, he raised his feet and walked towards them. "This brat is crazy. Could it be that he wants to fight the 4 of us? Let's fight. I don't care who he is. If he dares to look down on the Blood River Sect, then he's dead. Stop immediately. If you take another step, I'll kill you without mercy." "How dare you?" Dongfang Yu suddenly shouted. His voice was like thunder, shaking the hearts of the 4 Earth-ranked quasi-emperors. They felt that this was inconceivable. What was going on with the martial heaven continent's martial artists? In the past, when they had been bullied and plundered, these people had endured as much as they could. Even if they couldn't, they had endured. It was all because of that black-clothed youth called Yifei. This person was simply a huge scourge. It was his words that had ignited everyone's anger. He had turned a group of cattle and sheep that they could slaughter into a group of angry youths. It was as if they had lost their minds. Such a person must be killed. The Earth-grade quasi-emperor, who was already impulsive, was filled with rage as he prepared to forcefully kill Yi Fei. They understood that only by killing Yi Fei as quickly as possible would they be able to end this chaos and intimidate the other young martial artists. Unfortunately, they had underestimated the power of the youths when they were angry. Scram, a group of old bastards. You think you are in the right to be bandits. Today, your grandfather will not enter this small world. I will fight you to the death. Attack together. Beat these 4 old dogs to death. Kill, kill, kill. Over 100 youths roared at the same time. Their hearts were filled with dissatisfaction with the starry heaven's sex. Now, the Blood River sect's unreasonable actions had infuriated them. The roars of over 100 young half-emperors and martial monarchs caused the starry heavens to tremble violently. However, the loudest was Yi Fei's roar. All of you stop. Shua. At this moment, everyone's gazes gathered on Yi Fei again. There was anger and confusion. Even Dongfang Yu asked angrily, now that things have come to this, other than fighting, can we still compromise? We will not compromise. Many youths roared angrily. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they stared coldly at the 4 Earth-grade quasi-emperors. They were not afraid of death at this moment. Naturally, they were not afraid of the quasi-emperors. However, Yi Fei had to consider this point. He said in a deep voice, I am not here to provoke your anger. I also do not want any innocent people to die in this conflict. You all go in first. Leave these 4 watchdogs to me. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, he drew his sword. Yi Fei was already holding the blood sword in his hand. The whistling sword light condensed into an azure dragon, a white tiger, a vermilion bird, and a black tortoise. For different types of divine swords for different attacks. At this moment, they formed a perfect combination. Just like Yi Fei's 4 arms, they enveloped the 4 Earth-grade quasi-emperors in an instant. That is the blood sword that the elder gave to the blood swordsman. How did it appear in the hands of this brat? The 4 quasi-emperors were all stunned. They vaguely had a bad premonition in their hearts. However, soon after, they were enraged. You are just a half-emperor. No matter how talented you are, how can you be a match for us 4 Earth-grade quasi-emperors? Kill. The 4 quasi-emperors roared angrily at the same time. They condensed a blood-red light one after another. Like a vast ocean, 4 blood-red swords shook the starry sky and fiercely pierced toward Yi Fei. Roar! At this moment, a black sword suddenly appeared in Yi Fei's hand. Then, the black sword and the blood-red sword were brandished by Yi Fei at the same time, blocking the attacks of 2 quasi-emperors. However, the other 2 Earth-grade quasi-emperors rushed to Yi Fei's sides in an instant. 2 blood-red swords, one on the left and one on the right, pierced toward Yi Fei's vital points. Brother Yi, let me help you. Dongfang Yu's fist intent boiled, like a divine beast soaring in the sky, erupting with shocking runes. Seeing this, Yi Fei was shocked and immediately scolded angrily. Help my ass. Why aren't you rushing in? Do you think burning your bloodline is free? Bloodline divine armor. As he spoke, Yi Fei had already burned his bloodline. A layer of blood-red heavy armor immediately covered his body completely, blocking the fatal attacks of the remaining 2 Earth-grade quasi-emperors. This scene frightened the 4 quasi-emperors. Even if they were beaten to death, they would never have imagined that Yi Fei's defense would be so terrifying. He actually managed to block the attacks of the 4 of them by himself. Saint, should we still make a move? The 2 emperors of the Heavenly Book Sacred Academy gathered beside Dongfang Yu. Their faces were also filled with great surprise and shock. What's there to make a move for? Yi Fei alone is more monstrous than all of us combined. If we stay, we will only be a burden to him. Let's hurry up and rush in. Dongfang Yu's face twitched fiercely. While he was grateful to Yi Fei for standing up for him, he also felt a little depressed and sullen. Chapter 1574. When the four Earth-grade quasi-emperors saw that a large number of cultivators had actually taken advantage of this opportunity to charge into the Earth Formation sect, their expressions turned extremely ugly. If this matter was made known to the higher-ups, even if they were quasi-emperors, they would still be severely punished. Kill them all. We can't hold back anymore. You guys block this brat. We'll go kill the rest of the lowly commoners. No one knew better than the Blood River sect what the opening of the Earth Spell Formation sect's mountain gate meant. At this moment, a large number of martial artists rushed in, causing the four quasi-emperors to release shocking killing intent. Two of the quasi-emperors immediately used all their strength to hold back Yi Fei, while the other two roared and attacked the others. Over. Yi Fei's expression immediately turned grave. He had no intention of helping others, but in the face of the oppression of the Starry Sky sects, all the cultivators of the Tianmu continent were united. Since you want to bully us, I won't let you have your way. Greater Void Step. Yi Fei roared and suddenly stepped into the void. He suddenly appeared in front of the other two quasi-emperors. The Black Sword and the Blood Sword both shone with a terrifying black and red light. This light tore through the void and shattered the domains. Boom! The attacks of the Star Sword Embryo and the Demigod Tool actually sent these two Earth-grade quasi-emperors flying, along with their domains. After that, a demonic god roared behind Yi Fei. A demonic god with 3 faces and 6 arms suddenly swung 12 large crimson sabers at the other two quasi-emperors who were rushing over. This scene scared the 4 Earth-grade quasi-emperors. Their faces paled, and they looked at Yi Fei with a hint of fear. Extreme shock and fear appeared in their eyes. A demonic god bloodline. He actually has the demonic god that our Blood River sect worships. Wah! Due to their extreme shock, the two quasi-emperors were caught off guard. They were smashed back by the 6 blood saber mountains. They vomited a few mouthfuls of blood and suffered a certain degree of injury. During this time, the other cultivators had already charged into the Earth Formation sect's gates. Yi Fei also put away the Black Sword and the Blood Sword. He used the Great Void technique once more. He directly went from the starry sky to the small world's entrance. He was incomparably calm, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. However, the 4 quasi-emperors were frightened by the demonic god that Yi Fei had manifested. By the time they reacted, Yi Fei and over 100 cultivators of the Tianmu continent had already charged in. The 4 quasi-emperors nearly fainted from anger. Damn it, that Yi Fei brat. How can he have the same pure demonic god bloodline as the Blood Spirit Child? Could he also be a peerless genius? Spirit Blood sect. Earth quasi-emperors like us of the Tianmu continents, of course, are too weak. There's also the Blood Spirit Child. That brat called Yi Fei also has the demonic god bloodline. We have to inform him of this matter. This old man will go in and inform the Blood Spirit Child. The Earth Quasi-Emperor with the lightest injuries hesitated for a while, but still followed closely behind, charging into the Earth Formation sect's gates. However, before this Quasi-Emperor could really charge in, the small world's entrance suddenly erupted with a terrifying light of resistance. That light caused this Quasi-Emperor to vomit blood and retreat. Quasi-Emperors are forbidden from entering. A cold voice came from the small world's interior. It also sounded like some kind of warning. Hearing this voice, Yi Fei suddenly relaxed. He had been worried that these 4 Quasi-Emperors would charge in as well. If that happened, he would be caught in an endless battle and would not be able to pass the Guardian's test in peace. However, that voice relieved Yi Fei of his worries. It turns out that Quasi-Emperors are forbidden from entering the Earth Formation sect gates. This saves me a lot of trouble. Now it's time to start passing the test here. Yi Fei sized up his surroundings. Soon, he was puzzled to discover that most of the cultivators who had entered before him had disappeared. Only 7 or 8 cultivators were gathered outside a valley, hesitating and not daring to enter. They also sensed Yi Fei's aura, and the expressions of these martial artists suddenly became excited. It's Demon Lord Yi. This is great. We were actually assigned to the same test as Demon Lord Yi. We have hope of passing this test. In the past, when they saw Yi Fei, they would most likely reject him. However, after experiencing the matter of everyone fighting against the Blood River sect together, they already had a great deal of approval for Yi Fei. Their gazes toward Yi Fei were filled with kindness and cordiality. Can you not call me that? Yi Fei felt very depressed. He was originally an honest person. It was because of these people that his reputation had been ruined. Don't tell me we have to call you Demon Lordy? A few of them were stunned. They felt that this title was a little arrogant. What's the situation inside? Yi Fei no longer bothered about the title and asked, "Where did the others go?" "We're not sure either. When we entered, there were only a few of us left. With our individual strength, it would be very difficult to break through the array defense in front." These few cultivators lowered their heads in embarrassment. Although they were courageous, their strength was at the bottom of the group. It was no wonder that they were so enthusiastic when they saw him. After all this time, they were hoping that someone could break through the array defense in front. Yi Fei tried to walk toward the valley. As expected, he discovered that there was a strong resistance at the entrance of the valley. It was like a solid wall that separated him from the valley. However, this kind of array formation is not difficult for me. Open for me. Yi Fei took out his black sword again and fiercely smashed it at the invisible wall in front of him. The heavy black sword smashed the surrounding air, creating a thunderous explosion. It also caused the faces of the few young cultivators to turn pale. Demon Lord Yi is indeed not human. However, this is also our luck. Without Yi Fei, with just a few of us, even if we smashed it for 10 days and 10 nights, we might not be able to break through the array defense here. Boom, boom, boom. The black sword was raised again and violently smashed down again and again. Even so, Yi Fei had to smash it more than 10 times before he destroyed the array with brute force. Just as everyone heaved a sigh of relief, countless array runes suddenly appeared in the entire valley. These array runes were like huge air vents. As they whistled, a strong wind raged. Then, the entire valley began to shake violently. It was actually lifted up from the ground by this gust of wind. Fiercely, it smashed toward the group. The few cultivators were so frightened that their legs turned to jelly. It was not that they had never seen a hurricane before, but it was the first time they had seen a hurricane that could blow up a mountain. Demon Lord Yi, what should we do? They subconsciously gathered around Yi Fei. Yi Fei was speechless. However, when he saw this exaggerated hurricane, he also took a deep breath. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.